Chapter 426. Yarrow clan members blushed at her mother's reprimand and didn't know how to refute. Madame Ma was so angry that she spilled the beans and told them everything that had happened in the past. Lass, you think you're smart, but do you think everyone around you is a fool? You've never been obedient to your mother. If I didn't let you be a maidservant in a rich family, it's not like our family can't afford to raise you, but you insisted on going to see the world. What happened in the end? You've wasted your whole life. You were bragging a few days ago that you were used to seeing those tasteless old ladies in the Pang residence and that you would never be an evil mother-in-law. But look at what you've done. It's true that our Dai Fu is in a high position and powerful, but think about it, how many good families would marry their daughters to power? Minister Qin is a figure like Zhuge Liang. The reason why he chose our family was not for the power of the Dai Fu. If he wanted power, he would enter the palace in the future. Why would he exchange it for the pearl in his hand? Look at your son's bad debts. Dai Fu is a good child, but who wouldn't be afraid of marrying him? When Dai Fu went to war, we were worried at home, afraid that something would happen to him. Have you forgotten how it felt? There are so many enemies targeting Dai Fu, and your majesty is one of them. Have you forgotten that we were taken as hostages? Look at him now. He went to the palace to pay his respects on the second day of his marriage, but he could go in vertically and come back horizontally. Do you really believe that Lass Yi is anemic when she says she's anemic? That's because she's sensible and doesn't want us to worry. Your son is so poor, and Lass Yi has suffered so much after marrying into the family. Instead of treating her better, you're fighting with her. You're in your 40s after all. How long will you be able to grow up? How long will you be sensible? Madame Ma scolded so much in one breath. When she thought of the past in her early years, she was really angry and bitter. She had been straightforward and upright all her life and had never harmed anyone. Naturally, she didn't like those scheming people. Yet, her daughter had such a personality. She was bad, but she wasn't an evil person. However, she was kind, but she had those crooked thoughts that she had since she came back from a rich family. His perspective on everything was different from before. The Yarrow clan listened to their mother's scolding. She started from the time when she talked about the time when she was a maidservant of the Pang family. He began to weep silently. In the end, her tears fell like rain. Mother, even though I was wrong in the past, I was wrong. However, her daughter had no other choice. To tell you the truth, I like Pang Zhongjing, but our family is just an ordinary family. Other than being a maidservant of the Pang family, what else can I do? Although I didn't get a status, I have a Dai Fu, the son of Pang Zhongjing, and you still have a reason? Mrs. Ma was stunned by the Yarrow clan's words. Just because you like him, you want to be his maid. Are you willing to be a bed warmer? Madame Ma almost slapped her. Yarrow Changgu reacted quickly and stopped his wife. All right, it's been so many years. Furthermore, with Dai Fu around, there is hope for our future. This is not a bad thing. Aren't we talking about Yi Yi's matter now? Mrs. Ma glared at the Yarrow clan while panting and said angrily, what else is there to say about Yi Yi's matter? She married into our family and was unlucky to have such a mother-in-law. Don't blame your son for falling out with you. I get angry just looking at you. The Yarrow clan lowered her head and wiped her tears after being scolded. Mrs. Ma was even more displeased. She got up angrily and went to the courtyard, where she found a cudgel and began to brandish it. She brandished the cudgel ferociously. Only Yarrow Changgu and the Yarrow clan were left in the room. The Yarrow clan finally sobbed and said, Father, please be reasonable. Is Mother right to say all those things about me? Let's not talk about Dafu's matters. Just the treatment of the Qin family's girl, how could I not feed her and clothe her? I didn't say that I wouldn't give her that pair of cards. It's just that she just married into the family. She should have given me time to see her character, right? In the end, Dai Fu did it. In short, he almost said that he wanted to separate from the family. He married a beauty and became like King Ju of the Shang dynasty. Father, how can I not be angry? Yarrow Changgu smoked his cigarette, then shook his head and said, you can't say everything like that. You've also done something wrong. Sister Yi married into our family, so she's one of us now. You also know Dai Fu's taste. If that lass didn't really know her place, our Daifu is so smart, how could he like her? Besides, didn't you hear what Shu Weiji and the others said? Sister Yi is very smart. Even if she doesn't have a strategist by her side, she can do great things with her own brain. Back then, when she gave Daifu advice, she was even more outstanding than the strategists. Why do you always have to go against such a good wife? When Yarrow clan heard this, she felt wronged and said, Father, why are you speaking for an outsider and ignoring your daughter's sadness? Outsider? Yarrow Chungu knocked his brass tobacco pipe on the edge of the Kang bed. After marrying into the family, she's one of us now. You have to treat her like your own child from the bottom of your heart. You don't have a daughter yourself, so you can just treat it as if you're raising another daughter. Isn't that good? Besides, Yi Yi wasn't a child who didn't deserve love and care. If you always think like this in the future and treat Yi Yi as an outsider, then I think Daifu will treat you as an outsider sooner or later. Yarrow clan's tears fell. That's why I'm so sad. For a woman, he treats me like this. He doesn't even remember how much I've sacrificed for him all these years. He has already forgotten how I protected him and kept him alive until now. Yarrow Chungu looked at his sobbing daughter, angry and distressed. All right, don't cry anymore. Let's follow Daifu's plan for now. I'll discuss it with your mother later and see what to do in the future. What could Yarrow clan do? She could only nod. She knew that Yarrow Chungu's words were still gentle. If she were to tell Madame Ma about her crying just now, she would definitely be scolded in the end. Qin Yining held Pang Xiao's hand and walked all the way to Jinhua Park. He said in a low voice, "You shouldn't be like this. It's not easy for Mother. For so many years, Mother didn't find a suitable family for you. You should be filial to Mother." "I know." Pang Xiao sighed and said, "I'll be filial to Mother, but I can't let her be bullied by you. I think Mother still has some love for power. She likes to manage the household, so let her manage it. In the future, we just have to close the door and live a simple life. You can manage Jinhua Park from top to bottom." At this point, Pang Xiao was a little apologetic. "Sister Yi, I've wronged you. I also want to hand over the household to you, but that's my mother after all. I'm afraid that she'll fall ill from anger. I understand. I didn't care about managing a courtyard or a house. All I wanted was for my family to be able to live together in harmony. Mother cherishes you in her heart, so she scrutinizes me. You should understand Mother's painstaking efforts. She didn't deliberately target me. She just cares about you." Hearing Qin Yining's words, Pang Xiao's heart was both happy and moved. She couldn't help but hug Qin Yining's slender waist. When Qin Yining saw that he was about to bend over, she immediately understood what he was going to do. She blushed and pushed him, saying, "What are you doing? It's broad daylight, and we're outside." Pang Xiao only wanted to hug her, but she clearly misunderstood. Her delicate and soft body nestled in his arms. Thinking of last night's ecstasy, she became excited. "You're right. We can't do it outside. Let's go back to the room first." Qin Yining was deliberately misunderstood by him, and her face turned red with anger. "You're simply too naughty. Why didn't I realize you were so naughty before? I'm naughty. I'm even naughtier." Pang Xiao blew on his fingertips and went to tickle Qin Yining. Qin Yining was the most ticklish. She was chased back to the room by him and closed the door, not allowing Pang Xiao to enter. Pang Xiao leaned against the door and peeked into the room through the crack in the door. He said, "If you don't let me in, then I'm leaving. I'm going to find another girl." When Qin Yining heard him say this, she was amused and laughed. "Go ahead if you have the ability. Okay, wait here." Pang Xiao turned around and left. Qin Yining heard the sound of his footsteps from inside the room and became a little anxious. Although she knew that he was teasing her, she couldn't help but open the door and look outside. In the end, she saw Pang Xiao's smiling face. Didn't you leave?" "Yes. I heard you open the door, so I came back." His large hand held her waist, and he leaned over to kiss her bright red lips. He closed the door with his foot and back, then carried Qin Yining directly into the bedroom. Qin Yining's blushing face was completely ineffective. As a result, She didn't even have an appetite for dinner. She just lay in the middle of the soft silk satin bed and slept until it was dark. Even the mahjong tiles sent by Zhao Kuan's family were received by Ji Yun and Bing Tang. Zhao Kuan's family knew that Pang Xiao and the Yarrow clan had a small conflict. He even stretched his neck to inquire about the situation inside the room. Bing Tang didn't like such people, so she said, Wang Yi and the princess consort are discussing the matters of the imperial court. They are busy at the moment. If Mama Zhao has any instructions, just let me know. I will tell the princess consort later. Ayo, I won't trouble you, miss. I'll leave first. Zhao Kuan's family ran away dejectedly. Bing Tang and Ji Yun looked at each other. Both of their faces were a little red, but they both burst out laughing. When it was time to return home, Qin Yining still got up early to pay his respects to Madame Ma and the Yarrow clan. Qin Yining smiled and said, Today, we will return home for a short visit. We will also introduce Wang Yi to the family. We will be back in the evening. The Yarrow clan was still as dignified as usual, as if the unhappiness had never happened. When you go back, send our regards to your parents. Don't forget to bring the gifts we prepared. Qin Yining smiled and said, Yes, thank you, mother. Madame Ma smiled and said, We are family. There is no need to thank us. I heard that you arranged something for the servants of Jinhua Park to do this morning? Yes. Qin Yining smiled and said, Granddaughter-in-law is stupid. I thought for a long time about only managing Jinhua Park. Fortunately, there are few people in the courtyard, so it is not that difficult to grasp. Chapter 427. Qin Yining smiled shyly and said, I'm just trying to avoid being lazy. Ever since Pang Xiao humiliated the Yarrow clan, they insisted on not paying attention to what happened in Pang Xiao's courtyard for the entire night. They also didn't ask Zhao Kuan's family to investigate. Therefore, the Yarrow clan didn't know what Madame Ma said. The Yarrow clan originally wanted to maintain their stance, but when they saw that Madame Ma and Qin Yining hit it off so well, they couldn't help but ask, how did Sister Yi arrange it? When they asked, they felt that they would lose face, so they added, I want to learn. Qin Yining saw that the Yarrow clan's expression was a bit awkward. He was afraid that she would feel awkward, so he smiled and said, I just sorted out the matters in the courtyard and arranged what everyone should do. Then, I set the time for each day's work. If there's no urgent matter, they can come back at the right time to receive a token. Urgent matters are excluded. When the Yarrow clan heard this, they understood the knack and couldn't help but praise, this is very good. This time is a link between the previous and the next. The matters that happened in the morning and in the afternoon can all be arranged at this time. Moreover, we don't have to worry about people coming to disturb us at any time. Your method is really smart. After the Yarrow clan praised him, she awkwardly remembered that she seemed to be saying goodbye to her daughter-in-law. Her face showed some embarrassment. Qin Yining said shyly and intimately, Mother, you're too kind. Your daughter-in-law is just used to being lazy. Seeing the bright and sincere smile on her face, the Yarrow clan couldn't help but smile as well. Madame Ma was very gratified and said, I heard from Dai Fu that you have to take care of business outside. Don't tire yourself out. Yes. In terms of business, I'm just sitting there and enjoying the profits. My previous manager in Dian is very loyal and experienced. He can arrange everything properly with just one word from me. I don't need to spend too much effort. That's good, that's good. It's a blessing that you have such a loyal and devoted person to help you, but it's also your ability that can make others submit to you. I've always known that you're an outstanding girl, and it seems like I was right. It's Dai Fu's fortune to have such a virtuous wife like you. Mrs. Ma held Qin Yining in her arms and patted her back with her old hand. Although Qin Yining had a biological grandmother, she had never experienced such sincere love from her family Qin old madam, nor had she been loved so sincerely. Mrs. Ma's body also had the unique smell of an old person. It was dry, warm, sunny, and the sweet fragrance of the skincare products she used. People couldn't help but rub against her arms, feeling very warm. Grandma only knows how to praise me. I'll be proud in the future. You won't. You're a good kid, not that kind of person. Mrs. Ma patted her back again and again. She liked Qin Yining more and more. She didn't have a granddaughter. Qin Yining was 7 or 8 years younger than Pang Xiao. She had never had a delicate and soft granddaughter by her side. Now that she had such a well-behaved, smart, and beautiful granddaughter-in-law, Mrs. Ma liked her very much. Yarrow clan watched as Mrs. Ma hugged Qin Yining so lovingly. She recalled that when she was young, she didn't seem to have occupied her mother's embrace for so long. Her heart ached a little. She realized that she had such emotions and felt that it wasn't right. However, some emotions came from the heart and couldn't be controlled. For example, her precious son had married a wife, and she was worried that she wouldn't be able to keep her position. Mother. At this moment, Pang Xiao, who had changed into a new dark blue brocade robe, strode in. He saw Yarrow clan from where he entered the door, so he smiled and bowed first. Yarrow clan saw that Pang Xiao and her weren't estranged and were still as close as before. She couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "Daifu is here." "Yes. I just prepared some gifts. Today, when I go to my father-in-law's house, I have to change the way I address you." As they spoke, they arrived in front of Yarrow Chungu and Mrs. Ma. Pang Xiao still smiled and bowed. Yarrow Chungu called Pang Xiao to his side and asked him in a low voice what gifts he had prepared. After listening to Pang Xiao's explanation, he felt that it was appropriate. After thinking for a while, he instructed, "You should also prepare some small fortune bags with gold and silver shells inside. If you meet a junior or a peer of the same generation, it won't be ugly to use them as a greeting gift if they need them." Pang Xiao naturally prepared it, but he forgot to mention it just now. Hearing Yarrow Chungu's reminder, he nodded obediently. "Ah, this is ready-made. I'll bring it with me when I go back." The room was filled with joy and harmony, as if the previous unhappiness had never happened. Mrs. Ma was satisfied and urged Pang Xiao, "If you're ready, then get ready to set off. Uncle should be here soon." Returning home in 3 days required the clan brothers to pick them up. Qin Yining smiled and said, "I think he should be here soon." As soon as he finished speaking, someone outside replied, "Uncle is at the gate. Go quickly. Be careful on the road. Send our greetings to the in-laws." Mrs. Ma gently patted the back of Qin Yining's hand. Qin Yining smiled and nodded. He followed Pang Xiao and left Pine Crane Hall. In front of the gate of the prince's mansion, Qin Yu and Qin Han were discussing whether they should go in and greet the old madam of the prince's mansion. As they were talking, they saw Qin Yining and Pang Xiao coming out side by side. 2 brothers-in-law. Pang Xiao was not a wastrel and took the initiative to greet them. Originally, Qin Yu and Qin Han were a little afraid of him because of his high status and reputation. They were worried that he married Qin Yining for revenge. Now that they saw his warm smile and that Qin Yining was fine, the 2 brothers felt relieved. Their attitude towards Pang Xiao was also much more natural. Qin Han said, "Brother-in-law, shall we set off now?" Pang Xiao was very happy with this title. It made him happier than calling him Wang Yi or elder. At this time, the carriage had already rushed out of the mansion. Pang Xiao first helped Qin Yining into the carriage. He was worried that she would be uncomfortable and almost carried her up. Qin Yining found that his hand on her waist exerted a little force. She immediately realized his intention and pushed him away with a blush. They exchanged glances. So many people are watching. Pang Xiao had no choice but to let go. After Bing Tang and Ji Yun got into the carriage, Pang Xiao took the reins and got on the horse. Qin Han and Qin Yu saw everything and felt even more relieved. The 2 of them also got on their horses and chatted with Pang Xiao along the way as they led the way in front of the carriage. Qin Yining sat in the carriage and couldn't help but feel a little emotional. The last time they came out, she was still combing a girl's hair. Now, she was combing a woman's hair. Bing Tang and Ji Yun were a little worried when they saw Qin Yining frowning slightly. They saw what the Yarrow clan did in the mansion these 2 days and felt wronged for Qin Yining in their hearts. Fortunately, Wang Yi did not tie up his mother. Otherwise, Qin Yining would feel even more wronged. They went all the way to the main street where the family Qin lived. As soon as they turned the corner, they saw the Qin mansion's gate open wide. Qin Huayuan, who was wearing a round neck-long robe, and the Sun Clan, who were craning their necks in anticipation, were standing in front of the gate. When they saw Qin Han, Qin Yu, and Pang Xiao turn around the corner on their horses, the Sun Clan couldn't help but quickly go forward to welcome them. Pang Xiao and the others quickly got off their horses. Pang Xiao came forward and bowed, "Mother-in-law." After hearing this familiar address again, the Sun Clan was no longer sure if Pang Xiao would be sincere to Qin Yining, so they just nodded and said, "You're back. Quickly go in." The carriage stopped. Qin Yining lifted the curtain and smiled, "Mother, why did you come out?" Sun Clan quickly took her hand and helped her get off the carriage. "Your cousin went out, so I came out. I can't stay at home. Quickly go home with mother." As she spoke, she held Qin Yining's arm and walked towards the mansion. Pang Xiao came to Qin Huayuan and bowed, "Father-in-law." Qin Huayuan smiled and nodded, then turned and said, "Let's go. Let's go home first." When Qin Huayuan and his wife received them, the doorman had already rushed into the mansion to pass on the message. The family Qin's mansion wasn't big. After walking a few steps, the group of servants arrived at the main room of the inner residence. The old madam was wearing a maroon-red robe with a round neck. She had specially combed her hair and inserted a jade hairpin. She was sitting cross-legged on the kang bed by the window. Second old master, second old madam, third old master, as well as the brothers and sisters in the family, were all gathered together. When the old madam entered, everyone smiled and greeted her politely. Mammy Qin placed 2 brocade mats on the ground. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao went forward and kowtowed to the old madam. "Greetings to the old madam. Your granddaughter kowtows to you." Pang Xiao also said, "Greetings to the old madam." The old madam's heart was surging with emotions. She was so excited that her hands were trembling. The person kowtowing to her was the Prince Zhongshiren of the Daeju dynasty. He was the murderous spirit who killed people like scything flax. He was the scholar of Wuying Palace who had the power to overturn the imperial court. If she didn't have a granddaughter like Qin Yining who had the ability to become a Wangfei, how could she receive such a greeting? "You may rise." The old madam forced a smile and ordered Mammy Qin to give a greeting gift. It was a high-quality inkstone. Pang Xiao smiled and ordered someone to accept it. Qin Yining introduced Pang Xiao to his second uncle, second aunt, third uncle, eldest cousin brother Qin Yu, second cousin brother Qin Han, second cousin brother Meng, fifth cousin brother Qin Xian, eighth cousin sister Qin Baoning, 10th cousin brother Qin Rong, 11th cousin brother Qin Zong, and cousin nephew Qin Yuzhen. Pang Xiao greeted them one by one. The elders greeted them, gave them greeting gifts, and then took them back. Their peers smiled and gave them greeting gifts. In particular, the greeting gift for the young cousin was a bag of golden beans. The second aunt was so happy that she couldn't close her mouth. Qin Yining only skipped Qin Huaining's introduction. Qin Huaining lowered her head and stood in the corner. She hated that she couldn't find a hole to hide in. She really shouldn't have come to this kind of occasion. But if she didn't come, it would be disrespectful to Pang Xiao and Qin Yining. She would be humiliating herself if she came. Now that she had been neglected for so long, she had long regretted it. If she hadn't targeted Qin Yining in the beginning and didn't use those methods, she wouldn't have lost the pity and sympathy of her father and mother. Even if she was an adopted daughter, how could a father like Qin Huayuan, who had such a high position and valued friendship, treat her unfairly? But there was no medicine for regret in this world. Chapter 428. Although second Tang's sister-in-law had good intentions, when everyone in the family heard this, they all looked at her with slight condemnation and dissatisfaction. Qin Han always knew that although his wife wasn't a bad person, there were some things that couldn't be resolved. He couldn't help but tug on her sleeve. Only then did second Tang Sero realize that Qin Huaining's status was awkward, and he didn't get along well with Qin Yining. No one in the family introduced her to him, so why would she do such a thing? Second Tang Sero smiled awkwardly, took 2 steps back, and didn't say anything. However, Qin Huaining smiled gratefully at second Tang Sero. He finally had a way to speak. He bent his knees and greeted Pang Xiao, "Hello, brother-in-law." "Brother-in-law?" Pang Xiao looked at him with a faint smile and said indifferently, "No need to be so courteous. Out of courtesy to Qin Huayuan, Pang Xiao gave Qin Huaining a greeting gift compared to the other siblings in the family. Although Qin Huaining called him brother-in-law, Pang Xiao had a high status and power. His actions were considered appropriate because of his status. When Qin Huayuan saw Pang Xiao's actions, he was very satisfied. He thought that Pang Xiao was really very attentive to Qin Yining. Matriarch now had such a high status and power grandson-in-law. The more she looked at him, the more satisfied she was. However, she still didn't dare to meet Pang Xiao's eyes. She felt that his gaze was too sharp and made people feel terrified when they met his gaze. After chatting for a while, Qin Huayuan, second old master, and third old master invited Pang Xiao outside to talk. They wanted to leave some space for the womenfolk. Seeing that Pang Xiao and the others had left, the Sun clan immediately grabbed Qin Yining's hand and went inside to have a private talk, completely ignoring the matriarch's expression. In the Sun clan's bedroom, Qin Yining and his mother sat side by side. The Sun clan member asked in a low voice, "How does Wang Yi treat you?" Qin Yining's ears turned red when he heard that. He coughed and said, "Very good." The mother of the Sun clan carefully sized up Qin Yining. When she saw her bashful smile that could not be concealed, she said with satisfaction, "Excellent. From what I see, although Wang Yi's temper is not very good, he is not someone who would abuse his wife. Those who fight on the battlefield are more or less domineering. As long as you follow his wishes and listen to his arrangements, I believe Wang Yi will not treat you unfairly." "Mother, you're right. I'll do as you say. Wang Yi treats me very well. What about your mother-in-law? And what about the two elders in the residence?" The Sun clan asked worriedly. When Qin Yining thought of Madame Ma's protection of her, her heart warmed. She smiled and said, "Wang Yi's maternal grandparents are very gentle and kind people. When my maternal grandmother was young, she was a chivalrous woman in the pugilistic world. Her temper is very straightforward, and she also dotes on me very much. My maternal grandfather's temper is soft, but he is a resourceful old man. He also really likes me. What about your mother-in-law?" The Sun clan member held Qin Yining's hand and asked, "Did she ask you to set up rules in her house?" Qin Yining knew that the Sun clan was someone who had suffered under her mother-in-law. She had also seen with her own eyes how the Sun clan set rules in front of the old matriarch. She also saw how the old matriarch made things difficult for the Sun clan after the Sun clan's accident. As a mother, how could she bear to let her child suffer the same pain again? Qin Yining held the Sun clan member's arm and shook it. "Mother, don't worry. My mother-in-law and grandmother are very dutiful people. Just as you said, although Wang Yi is domineering, he won't bully his daughter for no reason. He will even support her. Although my mother-in-law has some ulterior motives, which mother won't worry that her son will forget her after he gets married? These are all understandable. Life isn't lived in a day. There is still a long way to go. No matter what, it will get better and better." Hearing Qin Yining's words, the Sun clan member was very happy. She was also full of hope for the future. The Sun clan member was very clear in her heart. Her talent had always been very ordinary, and she had the temperament of a young miss raised in a duke's residence. The old matriarch was also a snobbish person. Therefore, she no longer looked forward to a harmonious mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship. However, Qin Yining was different. Qin Yining's life was still very long. In the future, her life in the prince's residence would be her main focus. The prince's residence was already very small in number. There were only a few people in the family. If there was someone who didn't like Qin Yining, then her life in the future would be difficult. Ever since Qin Yining got married, the Sun clan member hadn't been able to sleep well these past few days. She kept thinking about it over and over in her mind. She always felt that her daughter had gone to someone else's home. From a treasure in her palm, she had become a pile of rubble that could be discarded on the ground. In the past, she didn't treat Qin Yining well. Not long after they reconciled, her daughter got married. There weren't many opportunities for her daughter to be happy. She didn't even have the time to properly compensate Qin Yining. The Sun clan was really worried that Qin Yining's life in her in-laws' home wouldn't be good. Although Qin Yining couldn't completely understand the Sun Clan's mentality of compensation, she could still sense it. She was afraid that after they returned, the Sun Clan would still let their imaginations run wild. Thus, she simply told the Sun Clan about the matters in the prince's residence. Wang Yi is busy with official business, but he can always find time to accompany me. Mother-in-law is very kind. When she saw that I was about to start learning how to be a steward, she arranged for a respectable servant by her side to be ordered around by me. She was afraid that my words wouldn't have any weight in the prince's residence. Mother-in-law also treats me like her own granddaughter. She always holds my hand and talks to me. She's much more intimate than our family's old matriarch. The prince's residence is very big, but there aren't many people in the family. Thus, the residence is very spacious and safe. The servants don't have to squeeze together. The Sun Clan carefully listened to Qin Yining talk about the prince's residence. The more they listened, the more relaxed they became. In the end, they nodded repeatedly and said, "Your father has always been capable. The marriage that he agreed to definitely won't be wrong." Qin Yining heard this and laughed. "Mother is so protective of father. When I return, I will definitely tell father. I won't let down mother's sincerity." The Sun Clan's old face reddened when she heard this. She couldn't help but push Qin Yining, "You little girl." While the mother and daughter were whispering in the room, Pang Xiao and Qin Huayuan had already gone to the study room in the outer courtyard alone. Qin Huayuan sat down on the warm Kang bed by the window. Pang Xiao respectfully bowed to Qin Huayuan again. "Father-in-law, this son-in-law kowtows to you." Qin Huayuan supported him with a smile. "Quickly get up. We're all family. Why are you so polite?" "No, father-in-law, you must accept my bow. Actually, I have long wanted to thank you. Thank you for allowing me and Sister Yi to be together. It's just that it's inconvenient to talk outside. I haven't found this opportunity." "Quickly get up." Qin Huayuan helped Pang Xiao up and said with a smile, "You are an open-minded person. I should be the one apologizing to you for what happened back then." Pang Xiao heard this and quickly shook his head. "Father-in-law, no matter what the people outside say, you must listen to me. Back then, you were Dian and my father was from BG. You were originally standing on opposing sides. Naturally, you did things based on your own abilities. Furthermore, although your plan to sow discord back then was beautiful, the incapable ruler of BG had long disliked my father. He was worried that he would gather troops and rebel. That was why he found an excuse to get rid of him. Therefore, this matter is the result of many reasons as time goes on. It has nothing to do with your plan to sow discord. Furthermore, even if it was really because of the plan to sow discord, there was no other way. From the beginning, I have never vented my anger on you. If I did, why would I look for Sister Yi a few years ago?" A few years ago. Qin Huayuan keenly caught the main point. Pang Xiao nodded and said, "I heard about it from the aide left behind by my father. They schemed to swap Sister Yi. My father's bodyguard said that they brought an orphan from Yangsheng Hall. However, that aide said that she was not an orphan. She was bought with money. In short, after they swapped Sister Yi, they threw away the swaddling clothes. Later, when they investigated further, they found that Sister Yi was brought home by Madame Liu. At that time, I was 14 or 15 years old. I heard my father's people talk about Sister Yi. At that time, I felt that she was very innocent, so I went to Liang City to look for her." Pang Xiao told Qin Huayuan about how he saw Qin Yining being pushed to the ground by the shop assistant in Liang City. However, she stubbornly did not cry. He followed behind her and watched as she went to buy steamed buns for her adoptive mother. He saw how she was so strong that she did not look like a 7-year-old child. Pang Xiao recalled carefully. In the end, he said that he deliberately kept some money. Then, he said regretfully, "Unfortunately, when I went back next year, Sister Yi's adoptive mother had already passed away. I never found her again. When I first gave her money, I did not have much money. At that time, I had just joined the army. Most of my father's aides were just using me half-heartedly. I did not have any money or real power. At that time, if I had 30% of my ability now, Sister Yi would not have had to suffer so many years in the mountains. Qin Huayuan did not speak. He listened calmly to Pang Xiao's story. In the end, he said, so you two were already destined to be together. It seems that all of this is fate. The money you gave me back then was equivalent to saving Sister Yi's life. That is why you two are husband and wife now. Pang Xiao's ears turned red. He muttered, perhaps it is fate. Qin Huayuan said with a smile, I don't have any requirements for you. I just hope that you can treat Sister Yi well. She is a child who has suffered a lot. She has never enjoyed any good fortune. When she returned home, she suffered so much because of me. I cannot accompany her for the rest of her life, but you can. In the future, I will entrust Sister Yi to you. When Qin Huayuan finished speaking, he was very serious. Pang Xiao stood up and bowed. Yes. Father-in-law, don't worry. I will definitely treat Sister Yi well. Both of them were very happy with this conversation. After talking about private matters, Qin Huayuan started talking about official matters. The injury caused by the turning over of the Earth Dragon should be very serious. Qin Huayuan directly told his son-in-law what he had analyzed. Your Majesty's internal funds are empty. When he urgently needs money, he will definitely speed up the search for that treasure. Moreover, I suspect that in order to raise money, Your Majesty will probably assign tasks to the ministers in the imperial court one by one. The small yellow crocus you gave to Sister Yi that day were too eye-catching. If Your Majesty cares about these things and asks you to borrow money, what will you do? Yarrow Changu was indeed very smart, but his intelligence was more than enough to open a restaurant in the marketplace. If he used it in the imperial court, his vision was limited. Now that Pan An had become his father-in-law, Pang Xiao felt that he had more confidence in doing things. This was because he knew that Qin Huayuan would definitely point him in the right direction when he was confused and uncertain about what to do. Especially when he had complete trust in him. Ever since they were in the Dayan imperial court, he had always trusted him. For him, as a son-in-law, this was already a great praise. Lunch was placed in old Madam's main room as usual. When the family was eating together, the young master didn't stick to those small details. He only placed a screen in the middle and then sat down on the two sides. Qin Yining sat next to the second madam of the Sun clan. He often heard the elders tell her to eat more. He also heard the men on the other side of the screen talking loudly and criticizing the current situation. In front of other people, Pang Xiao wasn't as talkative as he was in front of Qin Huayuan. However, he also didn't put on the cold air of Wang Yi. He was just steady. He didn't speak much, but every time he opened his mouth, he would hit the nail on the head. Second master and third master were full of praise for him. Qin Han, Qin Yu, and the others also had a new understanding of Pang Xiao. They used to think that he was a boorish man, but now it seemed that they were very wrong. On the other side of the screen, the second madam pulled on the Sun clan's hand and whispered, "It seems that Sister Yi has chosen a good family. Sister-in-law, you can rest assured now." After the Sun clan heard Qin Yining's introduction and their own observations, they couldn't be more satisfied with Pang Xiao. They nodded and whispered, "I only have one daughter. If she can lead a good life, then I can rest assured." Qin Huaining, who was sitting not far from the Sun clan, heard the words "I only have one daughter" from the Sun clan. Her heart was so sour that she almost cried on the spot. She no longer had any hope for the Sun clan's relationship with her. She knew that this family raising her was no different from raising a kitten or puppy that had been wagging its tail and begging for food for years. But when she heard that the Sun clan didn't care about her anymore, Qin Huaining was so sad that she wanted to cry. She sniffed and forced herself not to cry on Qin Yining's good day of homecoming. She didn't want to arouse disgust. But when she looked up, she met Qin Yining's smiling eyes. Qin Huaining's pupils shrank. She was so embarrassed that it was as if she had been slapped a few times. She awkwardly looked away. Qin Yining originally wanted to express goodwill. She thought that Qin Huaining was her father's adopted daughter. Although the two of them didn't get along well in the past, it was all in the past. Now that she had her own family and a husband who loved her, there was no need for her to harp on the past. But she didn't expect that her goodwill would be misunderstood. Forget it. If she acted too close, she might scare Qin Huaining. Anyway, she didn't expect them to have any contact in the future, so she would just let it be for the time being. After the meal, Qin Yining accompanied the Sun clan back to their room to talk. They even took a short nap in the afternoon. Pang Xiao and Qin Huayuan discussed state affairs. In the main room, old madam pulled Mammy Qin aside and said in a low voice, "Go and see what fourth girl is doing. Why is she unwilling to stay by my side and talk after coming back?" When Mammy Qin heard this, she couldn't help but sigh helplessly. In the past, she had a falling out with fourth miss. Now, she wanted to get close to her because she didn't interact with her. Fourth miss wasn't shameless and without self-respect. Why would she rush over? Although she thought this in her heart, she couldn't say it out loud. Mammy Qin could only say, "Fourth miss is not used to leaving first madam's side. Presumably, she just got married and has some personal things to say to first madam." When old madam heard this, she naturally thought of some things between husband and wife. She nodded in understanding. Although she was still dissatisfied with Qin Yining's estrangement, at least she didn't show it so obviously. In the evening, the sky gradually darkened. If they didn't leave now, there would be a curfew. Qin Yining reluctantly bid farewell to her family and got on the carriage with Pang Xiao. Seeing the family Qin's house getting farther and farther away, Qin Yining didn't sit up straight until they turned the corner and sighed softly. Pang Xiao stretched out his long arm and hugged her, letting her lean on his shoulder. He asked in a low voice, "You can't bear to leave?" "It's okay. Anyway, our house is not far away. You can come back whenever you want in the future." Qin Yining nodded gently and said faintly, "In fact, it's not that I can't bear to leave. I just feel a little disappointed in my heart. In the past, when I was at home, I always felt that there were many things that were not satisfactory. I thought that perhaps when I got married in the future, it would be better to leave those troublemakers. But now that he was living a new life, he still missed the days when he was in chaos. It's not that I miss those troublemakers, but that I miss those times. I can understand what you're saying." Pang Xiao sighed softly and kissed the top of her head. "It doesn't matter. Everyone will feel this way. It's not a bad thing to reminisce and miss, but life still has to go on. The days in the future will be better, and there will be more things worth remembering." His big hand rubbed her back, and finally his hand held her slender waist and pulled her into his arms. "When we have children in the future, you will be busier." Qin Yining was stunned when she heard this, and her face suddenly turned red. Yes, she didn't think too much about it. Only now did she realize that they were married and would have children. They were so loving. Bing Tang had also shown her that although her body was weak, it would not affect her fertility. If this continued, she might have Pang Xiao's child very soon. Thinking of this, Qin Yining blushed and felt uneasy, but there was still a faint sense of expectation in her heart. Pang Xiao lowered his head and gently bit her earlobe. Qin Yining's body trembled and she hurriedly retreated a little. She covered her ear and glared at him with a red face. "What are you doing?" Pang Xiao was tickled by her blushing face. He stretched out his long arm and pulled her into his embrace, urging the people outside, "Hurry up. Let's get home before the curfew. Don't delay." His words were proper, but his actions were not. Qin Yining's face and ears turned red from his teasing. When she got home, she immediately rushed back to her room, not daring to raise her head to look at the expressions of the servants around her. Pang Xiao was relaxed and acted as if nothing had happened. He also followed her back to his room and engaged in a deeper level of communication that they could not have in the carriage. It was a sleepless night. When Qin Yining got up the next day, she felt that her entire body was sore and weak. She did not have any strength, and her waist hurt so much that she did not want to get up. She rubbed the side of her long, lotus-like arms, only to discover that the outside of the bed was already empty. She opened her eyes and saw the bright sky through the red muslin curtain. "What time is it now?" Hearing her question, Ji Yun, who was guarding outside, came in and said with a smile, "Wang Fei is awake. It's already 9 in the morning. Wang Yi has already gone to court, but Wang Yi did not allow us to disturb Wang Fei's rest." Qin Yining's cheeks flushed red. She first put on yesterday's inner clothes before getting up to change clothes and wash up. After everything was tidied up, Bing Tang brought in the ginseng chicken soup that was simmering in the small kitchen. She smiled and said, "Wang Yi ordered for you to take good care of your body." She winked at her after saying this. Qin Yining glared at her, then quietly drank the soup. Right at this time, Xian Yun's voice came from outside. "Wang Fei, Sir Xie and Sir Shu are asking for an audience. They have something important to report." Qin Yining was stunned when she heard this. The relaxed and comfortable expression on her face disappeared without a trace. They were Pang Xiao's most trusted people. If they suddenly came, it must be something important. "Quickly invite them in." Qin Yining wiped her mouth and hurriedly went to the main hall. When Xie Yu and Shu Weiji saw Qin Yining, they first saluted and did not delay, directly stating their intentions. Chapter 430. Qin Yining's expression turned serious when he heard this. "Wang Yi is still in the palace?" "Yes," Shu Weiji said, Zi followed His Highness into the palace. He must have heard the news and immediately sent a letter out quietly. This way, we can know in advance and be mentally prepared. Qin Yining nodded in understanding. Qin Huayuan was usually like this. What she was worried about now was whether Your Majesty was plotting something by arranging for Pang Xiao to be sent to the disaster areas. The national treasury is currently empty, and Your Majesty's internal funds aren't that rich either. Since the disaster has affected so many people, it's only natural that a large amount of money is needed to send aid. Where is Your Majesty going to get this money? Even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice. Pang Xiao might have the ability to lead people to send aid to the disaster areas, but he can't possibly make money appear out of thin air, right? If he can't come up with the money, won't the disaster victims blame Pang Xiao in the end? Qin Yining felt that the situation was developing in the direction of Your Majesty owing the Tiger Army money years ago. If the disaster relief funds were really insufficient and the disaster victims couldn't even guarantee their basic necessities, wouldn't Pang Xiao have to take the blame? This can't go on. Qin Yining stood up and paced back and forth. He said softly, "We can't let Wang Yi take the blame. It's not that we don't want to work for the people in the disaster areas, but we can't let people hurt Wang Yi so easily. Mr. Xie, Mr. Shu, do you have any other news?" Xie Yu and Shu Weiji exchanged glances. Xie Yu said, "We do have some news. The second master of the Lu family, Lu Heng, went to the south. When the earthquake happened, he was not far away from the old capital of Dian. He seems to have been affected. Our spies received the news and were one step ahead of the others. However, the Lu family should have received the news by now. I wonder how Secretary Lu will react today." Qin Yining recalled the map he had randomly drawn. It was a barren mountain north of the old capital of Dian. He couldn't help but feel a little strange. She was just drawing randomly. At that time, she had no choice but to do so. She also expected that someone would be attracted to it. Who would have thought that he would be so unlucky as to encounter the Earth Dragon turning over? If Lu Heng lost his life because of this, wouldn't it be her fault? Qin Yining had mixed feelings for a while. Xie Yu and Shu Weiji keenly noticed that Qin Yining's expression was not right. Thinking about the rumors in the outside world and what had happened in the past, they knew that Lu Heng had always been interested in Qin Yining. Now that they saw Qin Yining's expression change when he heard that Lu Heng was in trouble, they couldn't help but have some guesses. Qin Yining looked up and saw the look in their eyes. He immediately understood what they were thinking. He couldn't help but tell them about the fake treasure map that day. "That's why I thought that if something happened, it would really be my fault." "I see." Shu Weiji smiled and said, "Princess consort, don't worry too much. Actually, even if we don't have the treasure map, the Lu family will definitely send people to the old capital of Dian to search for clues. Although the Lu family doesn't lack money, they don't want Your Majesty to get such a large sum of money. That way, they will have one less way to control Your Majesty. Therefore, they will go even if they don't have the treasure map. Moreover, the Earth Dragon turning over is unpredictable. It's not something you can control. Even so, I still feel uneasy. Qin Yining contemplated for a moment before he said, since that's the case, send someone to pay attention to the Lu family's reaction. Yes. I've already sent someone to find out. The two aides smiled. Right at this moment, someone came in to report that someone was looking for Xie Yu. Xie Yu got up and went out. She came back not long later with a piece of news. We just talked about Grand Secretary Lu and he already sent a message. Spies just came back and Grand Secretary Lu received news that Second Master Lu was affected by the disaster and was buried. Grand Secretary Lu, who claimed to be ill at home, immediately went to the palace to beg your majesty. Qin Yining bit his lower lip and thought for a moment before he said, Grand Secretary Lu loves Second Master Lu so much. If he goes to the south personally, he can take charge of the disaster relief. Wang Yi can be relieved of the main responsibility and let him do as he pleases. Yes. Xie Yu sighed. However, if Wang Yi really takes the lead, your majesty won't give Wang Yi the tiger army. Instead, he might give a few hundred soldiers from Prince Consort Ji's Dragon Stallion army to Wang Yi. This is to prevent Wang Yi from causing trouble when he regains control of the tiger army. Your majesty will naturally be worried. After all, Wang Yi's military achievements and prestige are all there. Qin Yining, Xie Yu, and Xu Weiji discussed the current state of the imperial court as they waited for news. At the same time, the imperial court was completely silent. Li Qitian, who was sitting on the dragon throne, said in a deep voice, the disaster relief in the south cannot be delayed. Since Dian has pledged allegiance to Daeju, that land belongs to Daeju. The people there are also Daeju's people. How can we just stand by and watch them die? A few officials who had spoken out against the disaster relief were silenced by your majesty's words. Yu Qiyang, who had been standing in a corner like a wooden puppet ever since he pledged allegiance, finally stood up. He cupped his hands and said, Your Majesty, I have something to say. Oh, so it's the County King of Yang. Li Qitian seemed to be exceptionally patient in front of the Yu Qiyang. My dear minister, please speak. The words my dear minister were spoken clearly. If it was any other time, under such flaunting and humiliation, Yu Qiyang would have long turned pale and hid in a corner, trying her best to reduce her presence. However, today, he said sternly, Your Majesty, I would like to request that you allow me to oversee the disaster relief in the old capital. Oh, Li Qitian said with interest, the County King of Yang truly loves the people as if they were his own children. However, I can't agree to your request. The disaster in the old capital of the Yang dynasty is severe. After the earthquake, I don't know if there will be any more epidemics. If I let you go just like that, I'm afraid I'll be a burden to you. Actually, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that there was no way Li Qitian would let the Yu Qiyang go. The disaster area used to be the Yu Qiyang capital, and the people there used to be Yu Qiyang subjects. No one could guarantee that the Yu Qiyang did not have other forces in the area. It was just like the treasures left behind by a fatuous ruler that had fooled everyone for such a long time. If he agreed to let the Yu Qiyang go, wouldn't it be like letting a tiger return to the mountains? The Yu Qiyang thought about it and understood Li Qitian's concerns. He said, Your Majesty has just arranged for Prince Zhongshiren to help the people in the disaster area. That's good. Prince Zhongshiren is very capable and will be a good choice for disaster relief. Why don't Your Majesty arrange for me to go with Prince Zhongshiren? When Li Qitian heard this, he looked at all the officials in the court. Finally, his gaze fell on Pang Xiao. Seeing that Li Qitian seemed to be deep in thought, the officials did not dare to breathe too loudly. Only Minister Lu, who had lost his grandson, was deeply troubled. He could not control his emotions and said, Your Majesty, please send someone as soon as possible. No one could understand his most outstanding grandson. He had been talking to him nicely before he left, and now he was buried and missing. It was even more upsetting. Li Qitian could understand Minister Lu's feelings. It was because he could understand that he felt especially good. Lu Heng got the treasure map and ran away without permission. He didn't even know to hand the treasure over to the imperial court. This time, it would be better if he died in the south. Although that was what Li Qitian thought, Minister Lu was an old official. If Li Qitian acted too ruthlessly, He might hurt the hearts of the other officials. It would not be good for him to lead the officials in the future. Li Chitian began to think. At this moment, Qin Huayuan came out of his office and bowed. Your Majesty. Li Chitian trusted Qin Huayuan very much. He said pleasantly, What do you want to say, Minister Qin? Qin Huayuan bowed respectfully and said, Your Majesty, I think that the disaster relief cannot be delayed. We should send people out of the capital immediately. On one hand, we should prepare relief supplies to ensure that the people have enough to eat and wear. On the other hand, we should pay attention to bringing doctors to prevent an epidemic. This is an opportunity for Your Majesty to show your kindness to the officials. Li Chitian nodded in understanding. After all, the Dayan dynasty was not his territory. If he did nothing when the old Dayan capital was in such a big crisis, it would inevitably disappoint the people of the Dayan dynasty. Minister Qin and I have the same thoughts. We must go to the disaster relief this time. It's just that I haven't made up my mind on who to send. The County Prince of Yang is always thinking of the people. I think it's better to send him. As soon as he finished speaking, Yu Qiyang bowed happily and said gratefully, Thank you for Your Majesty's help. I will do my best to complete this task. These words made Li Chitian feel very comfortable. Having the former ruler of an enemy country submit to him like this was a display of his strength and ability. It also touched the happiest part of his heart. Seeing that Li Chitian seemed to have made up his mind, Qin Huayuan returned to his seat and did not try to say anything else. Li Chitian thought for a moment, then said, Fine. If that's the case, I will appoint the County Prince of Yang as the special envoy for disaster relief. I will leave the matter of sending disaster relief to the south to you. When you go out, you can't go without a capable person by your side. How about this? I will arrange for Prince Zhongshiren to lead 300 dragon stallion soldiers to go with you. They will protect your safety and listen to your orders. Yu Qiyang hated Pang Xiao to the core. If not for Pang Xiao, would the Dayan dynasty have fallen? If he had not planned this for a long time, Qin Yining would not have been betrothed to Pang Xiao, causing him to completely abandon the idea of having Qin Yining as a concubine. This man seemed to be born to go against him. Now he had to go to the disaster relief. To return to his homeland, he had to bring Pang Xiao with him. Yu Qiyang understood that Li Chitian wanted Pang Xiao to keep an eye on his every move. This was why he had taken the initiative to ask Your Majesty to be reassured. However, as the most embarrassed of the surrendered subjects, how could he find a suitable reason to refuse? Recalling what Jiyu Chang's grandfather, Jiyu Shixiang, had said, Yu Qiyang bowed respectfully and said, Your Majesty is very thoughtful. This subject thanks Your Majesty. At ease. Li Chitian looked at Pang Xiao with a smile. When the arrangements had just been made, Pang Xiao was in charge. Now he had become the county prince of Yang's bodyguard. Li Chitian looked at Pang Xiao's sour expression and felt a wave of satisfaction. He did not mind adding to the conflict between Pang Xiao and Yu Qiyang. Chapter 431. As soon as these words came out, the entire court was shocked. No one would have thought that Your Majesty would still value Prince Zhongshiren so much. When he arranged for him to go out of town, he was considerate of his newlywed status and allowed him to bring his princess consort along. It seems that Your Majesty still relies on Prince Zhongshiren as much as before. Regardless of what other people thought, Pang Xiao saw through Li Chitian's calculations clearly. He was clearly trying to make things difficult for him by reminding him that Qin Yining was someone that the Yu Qiyang coveted. With Qin Yining by his side, it would greatly reduce the chances of his love rival working together. Pang Xiao said, Many thanks to Your Majesty for your kindness. This subject accepts the decree. However, in his heart, he thoroughly despised Li Chitian's womanly behavior. Li Chitian was most likely thinking that Qin Yining had once discussed marriage with the Yu Qiyang during the Dayan dynasty. The Yu Qiyang often pretended to have deep feelings for Qin Yining. This trip together would definitely cause a lot of trouble for each other, right? However, what Li Chitian didn't know was that Pang Xiao no longer had any resentment in his heart. He didn't doubt Qin Yining's loyalty to him, and he had enough confidence in himself. He believed that the Yuchi Yang wouldn't be able to make any waves in front of him. Li Qitian interpreted Pang Xiao's dignified expression as depression, and his mood became even better. He said in a clear voice, "Since that's the case, then it's settled. You all go back and prepare. You will set off in the morning the day after tomorrow. Court is dismissed. This subject obeys the decree. Long live your majesty, long live, long live." All the subjects prostrated themselves on the ground and shouted "Long live" 3 times. After court was dismissed, Pang Xiao walked at the back of the group with a wooden face. He originally wanted to go back and discuss with Qin Huayuan what he needed to pay attention to during this trip. However, before he could walk far, an eunuch came to pass on a message. "Wang Yi, Your Majesty's order is for you to immediately go to the imperial study." A few people who were near Pang Xiao heard this and knew that Your Majesty must have arranged some important task for Pang Xiao. They were both envious and fearful of his current glory. Pang Xiao nodded and followed the eunuch to the imperial study. When he entered the door, he saw Li Qitian sitting on a round chair on the side. His posture was very leisurely. "Holy WNN." Pang Xiao approached and bowed. Li Qitian smiled and said, "You're here. No need for formalities. Come and sit." Pang Xiao did not dare to be excused. He went through the formalities before going to the seat next to Pang Xiao and carefully sitting down. Li Qitian smiled when he saw how respectful Pang Xiao was. "I'm sure you know why I've asked you to come. I've only assigned you one task on this trip to the south, and that is to carefully monitor the movements of the County King of Yang and his entourage. I've allocated 30 carrier pigeons to you, and you are to bring them all to the south. If you receive any news or suspicious information, you are to send a carrier pigeon back immediately." Carrier pigeons were specially trained. No matter how far they flew, they would be able to fly back to their nests as long as they were set free. Therefore, the carrier pigeons couldn't just fly around randomly. They had to go through fixed training before they could do so. Pang Xiao understood Li Qitian's intentions and whispered, "Your Majesty is worried that the County King of Yang is still in contact with the old Dayan officials?" Li Qitian nodded and said, "That's one of the reasons. The other reason is the most important one. I'm worried that if I let him go this time, he will find the treasure himself and take it for himself. He will then recruit new soldiers to fight against me. If that's the case, I'll be releasing a tiger back into the mountains." Pang Xiao could not help but smile when he heard that. "Your Majesty is wise and has already calculated everything. How could something like that happen? Don't worry, I will do my best to complete the task." "Very good, I believe you. This is the first time you've led the Dragon Stallion army out. You have to be careful. I will arrange a capable deputy general for you. He was originally a talent in the Dragon Stallion army. Don't tire yourself out. If there's anything you need, just order him to do it." He had even planted a nail in the coffin. "Yes. As you wish." Pang Xiao bowed respectfully. He did not show any emotions towards Li Qitian's arrangements and only listened to his orders. Since Li Qitian had achieved his goal, he didn't have the patience to continue acting. He only smiled and instructed Pang Xiao. Then, he said, "You should also go back early. You still need to make arrangements for Wang Fei to make preparations. Has her body gotten better?" Pang Xiao frowned slightly and said worriedly, "Her body isn't doing well. Perhaps it's because she suffered too much in the early years and hurt her foundation. The imperial physician has given her a prescription to nurse her back to health." Li Qitian was not really concerned about Qin Yining. He was just being polite. Seeing Pang Xiao so sad, he could only patiently console him before ordering Li Guanwen to send Pang Xiao off. Pang Xiao bowed respectfully and left the imperial study. He and Li Guanwen walked one after the other on the long palace path. The ground was paved with bluestone bricks, and there were many tenacious grasses stretching out from the cracks. The red walls and green tiles separated the azure sky into a slender space. Pang Xiao thought and said, "Chief Steward Li, while this king is away from the capital, I will have to trouble Chief Steward Li to stay by your Majesty's side. If your Majesty is tired, please help persuade him. Do not let your Majesty work too hard. If the entire imperial court relies on your Majesty, What will happen if he falls ill? Won't the imperial court be in chaos? Wang Yi is right. Li Guanwen looked at Pang Xiao emotionally and said, "It is Wang Yi who knows how to care for your majesty. This servant has been by your majesty's side all day and knows your majesty's hardships. Wang Yi, don't worry. This servant will do my best to serve your majesty. With Chief Steward Li here, this king has nothing to worry about. Goodbye then." Pang Xiao and Li Guanwen politely cupped their hands and quickly left. Li Guanwen stood in the same spot and watched Pang Xiao walk away. Then, he smiled and returned to the imperial study. He casually mentioned Pang Xiao's concern for your majesty. When Li Qitian heard this, he only smiled. He didn't seem to take it to heart and didn't seem to take it seriously. When Pang Xiao brought Huzi back to the palace, Qin Yining had already received the news that she was going to accompany Pang Xiao. This news came too suddenly. Qin Yining was stunned. However, Li Qitian's intentions were clear. She thought for a moment and understood the relationship between them. Since it was an imperial edict, it couldn't be resisted no matter what. Your Majesty arranged for her to accompany Pang Xiao was exactly what she wanted. Even if Your Majesty didn't arrange it, she would have thought of a way to disguise herself and follow Pang Xiao. It wasn't just because they were newlyweds who didn't want to be separated. The most important thing was that this trip was definitely not as simple as disaster relief. Qin Yining called Ji Yun and whispered in her ear, "Go to Master Zhong's place and tell him that I want to use the spices I asked him to buy from Mrs. Liao a while ago. Please ask Master Zhong to help me. I want to see Mrs. Liao. In addition, go home and tell my father that I want to see Mrs. Cao." When Ji Yun heard this, her expression changed. She immediately went out to do as instructed. Pang Xiao stood by the door for a long time. He listened to Qin Yining's instructions. He smiled and asked, "What spices do you want? There seems to be some spices and bait in our warehouse. I'll find them for you later." When Qin Yining heard this, he couldn't help but smile and pinch Pang Xiao's earlobe. One look at his earlobes and one could tell that he was blessed, and the base of his ears was surprisingly soft. She was addicted to pinching and said with a smile, "I don't want any spices. Do you know the Qingtian alliance?" Pang Xiao hugged her waist and rested his face on her shoulder. He said softly, "Of course I know." Qin Yining said, "Mrs. Liao is a member of the Qingtian alliance. She is the person I use to contact the hall masters of the Qingtian alliance. Sister Yi, don't tell me you don't know that I'm the leader of the Qingtian alliance." Although the Dian dynasty has fallen, most of the people of the Qingtian alliance have re-entered the Yellow Book. They have turned over a new leaf and become the people of Daju. However, the people led by the Qingtian alliance, no matter which emperor, will only regard them as rebels. Therefore, they are now unregistered residents without the Yellow Book. They don't dare to show up publicly. They only do some business on the Taitan border. Pang Xiao didn't expect Qin Yining to show his trump card to him. Not to mention her ability. Her trust and sincerity were enough to move Pang Xiao. He felt as if he was immersed in warm water, and that warm water was Qin Yining's embrace. He touched her cheek with his cheek, and his breath blew in her ear. "Do you have any arrangements for the people of the Qingtian alliance?" Qin Yining was teased by his breath and snuggled into his embrace. She panted slightly and said, "I'm just taking precautions. I feel that this trip isn't simple. Your Majesty should have other plans. It's for the treasure. The soldiers you're going to bring out this time are all from the Dragon Legion. With Your Majesty's suspicious nature, he definitely won't let you come into contact with the people in the Dragon Legion alone. Therefore, he will definitely plant a spy in the Dragon Legion and let this spy come into contact with you. It can be considered as controlling you. That will be too passive. I don't want you to be directly under their blades." Pang Xiao was touched and smiled. "My wife is really smart and capable. I don't even want to be Wang Yi anymore. I just want to be your husband at home and eat your soft rice. Don't you think that's great?" Qin Yining could hear the seriousness in Pang Xiao's words. She understood that it wasn't that Pang Xiao didn't want to improve. It was just that he was too tired. There will be opportunities in the future. When the time comes, we'll find a place where no one will disturb us and live like this. You can eat my soft rice in any way? Pang Xiao was very touched, but he still couldn't help but tease her. Qin Yining's face turned red from his words. She pinched his ear and said, I'm talking about serious matters. Why are you like this? Seeing that not only her face but also her neck turned red, Pang Xiao smiled and said, okay. I won't tease you anymore. It's understandable that you want to contact the people of the Qingtian Alliance. Your father's guard, Madame Cao, should be your concubine. Chapter 432. Pang Xiao felt that he was about to drown in happiness in the gentleness of his wife, who was smart and capable, and who always thought about him. He held Qin Yining's waist and kissed her forehead, then kissed her eyelashes and cheeks. Qin Yining blushed shyly. Her long eyelashes fluttered on Pang Xiao's face, teasing him until his breathing gradually became heavy. Pang Xiao simply did not restrain himself and carried her in his arms. Qin Yining exclaimed and looked around nervously, only to find that all the servants had left and closed the door before leaving. No, it's broad daylight. It's not good. Qin Yining reached out to refuse. Pang Xiao chuckled as he put her down on the big red bed sheet. He casually pulled out the hairpin in her hair. Her long hair spread out messily in the blink of an eye, mixed with some small hairpins, and scattered on the pillow of the mandarin ducks playing in the water. Qin Yining's skin was white and delicate, which was unique to women in Jiangnan. When she lay on her back in panic, her big eyes were still watery, like a small animal that had been bullied. Pang Xiao simply loved the way she looked, whether she was domineering or shy, smart and cunning, or trying to reject him but welcoming him. He sat on her body, supporting the pillow with one hand and caressing her cheek with the other. Let's wait until tonight. No, I want to take a good look at you. You don't know how beautiful you are. Pang Xiao's eyes were burning with passion, like a child who had received a gift and carefully opened the ribbon tied with a bow on the gift box. His hands, which were calloused from holding knives all year round, were full of gentleness at this moment. Sister Yi, give me a child. I want a child of our own. Qin Yining's cheeks were pink and her body was weak. She was like a good zither being played by Pang Xiao, who was good at learning and singing a wonderful song. When he woke up, it was already evening. Qin Yining hugged the quilt as he got up and gently called for her to come in. Bing Tang and Ji Yun smiled ambiguously when they saw the bruises on her body. Even though Qin Yining was shy, there was nothing he could do. He was afraid that they would say something that would make him blush, so he simply picked a topic to talk about. Where's Wang Yi? Wang Yi is meeting an important guest in the study in the front yard. Wang Yi also said that if you wake up, you should go to the study immediately. When Qin Yining heard this, he raised his eyebrows and asked, Wang Yi didn't say who that person was. Bing Tang and Ji Yun shook their heads. Qin Yining smiled and said, then help me comb my hair. I'll go take a look. I plan to bring the two of you with me on this trip. In addition, I plan to bring Jing Zhe and the other three with me. Help me pass on a message and prepare yourselves. Yes. Bing Tang and Ji Yun both smiled. They will definitely be happy to be able to go out with Princess Consort. Qin Yining was amused and laughed. You guys, let me say this beforehand. This trip will be very dangerous. There will be disaster relief in the south, and there might be unexpected situations along the way. In the worst case, there might even be an epidemic. You all have to be mentally prepared. I know. When has Princess Consort ever been free of trouble? Bing Tang said with a smile, ever since I started following you, you have never stopped being troubled. However, I also know that with your intelligence, you will be able to deal with any trouble that comes your way. I'm not afraid at all. Ji Yun also smiled and said, Wang Yi will definitely protect you well. As long as we are by your side, we will definitely be fine. You're so sly. Qin Yining pinched Ji Yun's face without any anger. Ji Yun was thin and graceful. Her appearance was bright and beautiful. Bing Tang was petite and exquisite. She was also a cute person. Qin Yining couldn't help but think of their marriage. The two of you aren't young anymore. After we're done with these matters, I will find good in-laws for the two of you. If you have someone you like, you can tell me. I don't want to arrange a blind marriage for the two of you and arrange for the two of you to be unfamiliar and unreliable people. Bing Tang stomped her feet in embarrassment when she heard this. Princess Consort is too naughty. She only knows how to tease us. Then she turned and ran away. Ji Yun's face was also red as she said, I'm not like Bing Tang. I don't have anyone in mind. If Princess Consort doesn't mind, please keep me by your side to serve you. I also don't want to be forced to marry someone in a hurry. If I follow you, please allow me to slowly choose a good one. Qin Yining nodded in understanding and said, I won't force the two of you. You can slowly choose a suitable one. To be able to meet the right person at the right age was actually a very lucky thing. Many people would find it difficult to marry the person they truly liked in their entire lives. Qin Yining felt that he was extremely lucky to be able to love and be with Pang Xiao. She came to his side at the most beautiful age and integrated her best into his memories. Are Bing Tang and Huzi very close? Qin Yining changed the topic and asked. Ji Yun laughed softly and said, Nothing can escape Princess Consort's eyes. I think that Huzi is sincere about Bing Tang. It's just that Bing Tang doesn't agree. If she's not researching herbs all day, she's researching perfumes. In her free time, she spends more time with little porridge than she does with Huzi. Qin Yining also found it interesting when he heard this. She's someone who has experienced important matters and has her own ideas. I think she knows what to do. Yes. Ji Yun nodded in agreement. Qin Yining brought Ji Yun to the outer courtyard. He stopped in front of the courtyard where the study was and asked Ji Yun to stand guard outside. Then, he entered alone and walked through the corridor to the main room. Huzi was standing in front of the door. When he saw Qin Yining, he bowed from afar. Princess Consort, you're here. Allow me to inform Wang Yi. Thank you for your trouble. You're too polite. Huzi scratched his head and hurriedly went to inform Wang Yi. Not long after, the door to the study was pushed open. Pang Xiao walked in steadily with his long legs. When he saw her, his sharp phoenix eyes immediately filled with gentleness. You're awake. Qin Yining nodded. Come, father-in-law came secretly. It's not convenient to tell others. I was thinking that if you weren't awake, it would be the same if I talked to father-in-law alone. Now that you're awake, it's good that we can discuss it together. Pang Xiao held Qin Yining's hand and explained in a low voice in her ear. Qin Yining smiled and said, So that's how it is. After they entered the room, Huzi closed the door for the two of them. Then, he retreated to a distance and continued to stand guard. Qin Huayuan was dressed in an ordinary light blue robe with a round collar and wide sleeves. He was sitting on the side of the heated Kang bed by the window. Father. Qin Yining bowed respectfully to Qin Huayuan. Qin Huayuan smiled and said, You're here. Have a seat. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao moved an embroidered stool and placed it across from them. Pang Xiao even meticulously laid out a thick brocade cushion for Qin Yining. Qin Yining bit her lip and almost ran away. It was indeed uncomfortable for her to sit down, but she was still embarrassed to do it so openly. However, Qin Huayuan didn't seem to understand. He only looked at Pang Xiao with a satisfied smile. Qin Yining was touched and embarrassed at the same time. After they sat down, Pang Xiao said generously, Father-in-law, you said that the county king of Yang might have information about the treasure and that's why you volunteered to go. Could there have been a mistake? No. Qin Huayuan said gently, recently, the county king of Yang has been in frequent contact with concubine Ji Yu. You all know whose granddaughter Ji Yu is. Qin Yining said, Old Master Ji Yu knows the whereabouts of the treasure. Perhaps he's using his granddaughter to tell the county king of Yang. For your majesty to leave such a note on the first treasure he found, it does seem like something Old Master Ji Yu would do. Qin Huayuan nodded approvingly and said, You're right. I feel the same way. Although Ji Yu Shixiang is a slick official, he has a stubborn side as well. He doesn't know how to be flexible and he doesn't necessarily value the survival and happiness of the people. He cares more about the dynasty's legacy and bloodline. Therefore, he must be thinking about reviving the dynasty. Pang Xiao said, There are many people like that. It's just that many of them don't have the ability, and many of them have the ability but lack the connections. Those who have the ability and connections don't fit their mindset. Yes. Take me for example. Qin Huayuan smiled and said, I don't want to go through any more trouble. When the city gate is on fire, the fish in the moat will suffer. The people at the bottom are always the unluckiest. Even if there were no wars, droughts, floods, and landslides would be enough to make the people suffer. Add to that the original exorbitant taxes. If I were to stir up trouble for my personal beliefs, that would be really unwise. Pang Xiao couldn't help but smile and said, that's why people say that people of different families don't live in the same house. I think the same way as you. Qin Huayuan smiled and said, that's right. I've known for a long time that you're a kind person. Although your hands are stained with the sin of murder, you've killed one to save 10,000 people. Many people say that you're some kind of demon god behind your back. They say that you've killed too many people and will do this and that. But I don't think so. There's a Buddhist saying, if I don't go to hell, who will? You're the one who killed for the sake of the safety of millions of people. How can such a person not have good karma? Pang Xiao's face was hot from Qin Huayuan's praise, but his heart was warm. He hadn't thought so much. He was just following his heart and doing things. Qin Yining smiled happily when he saw that his father and Pang Xiao were getting along well. Father, we'll pay close attention to the county king of Yang when we go out this time. Millimeter. Just now, Zhishi told me that you have some arrangements. Yes. I've made an appointment with people from the Qingtian Alliance and Madame Cao. Before I leave, I want to make some arrangements. However, the silver mask spies should be under your Majesty's surveillance. If I see Madame Cao, it'll be a bit of an eyesore. Why don't you go back and pass on a message for me? That's fine. What message do you want to pass on? Qin Yining smiled and said, there are 16 silver mask spies in the capital right now. 8 of them are outside. I want to discuss with Madame Cao and transfer the 8 outside. Also, I need a few carrier pigeons. Qin Huayuan understood what she meant when he heard this and said, don't worry, I'll pass on the message. If she has any questions, I'll have her secretly come to see you without anyone knowing. That's good. Chapter 433. What Qin Yining didn't mention was that Cao Yuqing might not agree to other people's requests, but since it was related to Qin Huayuan, Cao Yuqing would definitely agree to it. In the past, Qin Yining only stood from the Sun Clan's point of view. He didn't want Cao Yuqing to get involved in his parents' marriage. Cao Yuqing was born beautiful, strong in martial arts, and rich in experience. It could be said that she was deeply in love with Qin Huayuan and would never leave him. After watching for such a long time, Qin Yining could see Cao Yuqing's sincerity and open-mindedness. She could see that Qin Huayuan really didn't have any feelings for her, so she was willing to take a step back and become Qin Huayuan's bodyguard to protect him. Because of love for the house, Qin Yining felt that Cao Yuqing was especially tolerant and trusting of him when facing him. So this time, if she were to ask Silver Mask to secretly spy on Qin Huayuan, it would probably take a lot of effort and she might not succeed. But if she were to ask her father to speak, she was almost certain that whatever her father said would be the truth. Qin Yining actually felt a little pity for Cao Yuqing's feelings of not being able to get what she wanted and could only protect. He also admired how she handled things. If it was someone with bad intentions, with such powerful martial arts, wouldn't it be easy to get rid of the Sun Clan and make a place for himself? But she didn't do that because she respected Qin Huayuan's decision. And she also respected life. Qin Yining, Pang Xiao, and Qin Huayuan discussed in a low voice for a moment. Pang Xiao instructed Huzi to quietly send Qin Huayuan out. You will escort Minister Qin all the way. Don't let anyone discover your whereabouts. Be careful. Got it, Wang Yi. Huzi smiled and accepted the order. The next day, Qin Yining went out in the morning to see Mrs. Liao on the pretext of buying spices. He also instructed Master Zhong to do some things before returning home at noon. Lunch was eaten together as a family. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao had just gotten married. The newlyweds hadn't even warmed up the bed yet, but the emperor had already arranged such a task for Pang Xiao. The whole family was a little reluctant. Even the Yarrow clan, who wanted to compete with Qin Yining, felt a little reluctant. Behind closed doors, they could play tricks. However, to outsiders, they were still a family. The Yarrow clan was really afraid that Your Majesty would cause trouble again. Sigh, it's a good thing that Dai Fu can bring Yi along when he goes out. Otherwise, I would really be worried to death. Mrs. Ma sighed. Yarrow Chungu poured cold water on him. But Dai Fu is going to the south for disaster relief. I don't know if it will be dangerous. When Mrs. Ma heard this, she frowned. The Yarrow clan was even more worried. I heard that the earthquake in the old capital of Dian was very serious and affected a lot of people. Finally, there were the 100 Dragon Stallion army soldiers who were holding the line. The disaster relief team put on a show. They only put away their ceremonial procession after they left the capital. However, when they reached the next town, they still had to play the ceremonial procession with gongs and drums. At that moment, Pang Xiao handed the horse to Huzi and jumped into the carriage. The spacious carriage was covered with thick mattresses. Worried about the hot weather, they even put bamboo mats on the mattresses. Qin Yining was lying on his side on the bamboo mat. He was holding his head with one hand and reading a travel book with the other. Her body rose and fell like a mountain, attracting all of Pang Xiao's attention. Pang Xiao squatted at the door of the carriage and thought, my wife is pleasing to the eye. Even when she's lying down, she's as beautiful as a painting. Qin Yining had already noticed that Pang Xiao had returned. However, he only squatted at the door and didn't come in. He couldn't help but look up and ask, what's wrong? When she looked up lazily, her casual flirtatiousness made Pang Xiao's heart beat faster. Although they were already married, Pang Xiao felt that his heart wasn't listening to him at times like this. His palms were sweaty. He felt that because he liked her, his heart ached and felt numb. Nothing. I'm just mesmerized by you, Pang Xiao said bluntly. Qin Yining didn't take it seriously. He rolled his eyes and said, come and rest for a while. The journey is still long. That's right. Pang Xiao leaned against the big pillow beside Qin Yining. He pulled her into his arms and stole a kiss. But there's nothing bad about this. We can be together every day on this journey. If I'm not in the capital, I'll be busy with all kinds of things. I can't accompany you just because I want to. Qin Yining laughed out loud. He didn't want to read anymore. He rested his head on Pang Xiao's strong thighs and said, I also think that this is very good. If I don't think about the disaster, I'll think that we're going out to play. Pang Xiao couldn't help but kiss her forehead. The journey to the south wasn't peaceful. Not only would it be difficult to travel due to the rainy season, but they also encountered two heroes going down the mountain. Fortunately, the Dragon Stallion army was well trained. Deputy General Yu Meng was also a brave and smart person. The journey was more daunting than dangerous. Your Majesty also sent a few carrier pigeons to Pang Xiao along the way. Pang Xiao didn't just use carrier pigeons to greet them. He reported everything they encountered along the way in detail. He emphasized the words and actions of the County King of Yang along the way. According to their honor guard, the County King of Yang and his party were at the front of the group. Pang Xiao and his party were at the back. Other than sleeping in the open, they didn't have many chances to talk. Pang Xiao's dislike of the County King of Yang was very obvious. Sometimes, Pang Xiao even locked Qin Yining in the carriage and didn't let her out. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining both knew that there was more than one pair of eyes in their group watching them. If they made a mistake in their words or actions, Li Chitian would be even more suspicious. On the morning of the 14th day of their journey, the carriage had already entered the territory where the Dian court used to be. Huzi suddenly came to the front of the carriage and said with a smile, Wang Yi, Yu Qiyang and Jiyu Shixiang are no longer in the first carriage. Now, there are two stand-ins in the carriage. The first two were actors. They stayed in the carriage to pretend to be Jiyu Shixiang and Yu Qiyang because they received money. Qin Yining heard this and looked at Pang Xiao in shock. Pang Xiao wasn't surprised at all. Got it. Secretly keep an eye on their direction. As for the group, don't get too close for now. Wait for Yu Meng to find out. Yes. Huzi accepted the order and left. Qin Yining said, I guessed that Jiyu Shixiang would use this opportunity to urge the Yuqi Yang to search for the treasure. But I didn't expect the County King of Yang to use such a method to escape. Isn't he afraid that your majesty will kill Li Yangyang and Jiyu Chang when the news reaches the capital? Qin Yining didn't believe that the Yuqi Yang would go back to work like a cow or a horse after finding the treasure. Therefore, the Yuqi Yang might have already predicted that he would find the treasure when he left the capital. Perhaps he wouldn't be able to go back and had already planned to sacrifice Li Yangyang and Jiyu Chang. Seeing that Qin Yining's expression didn't look good, Pang Xiao patted her shoulder comfortingly and said, the Yuqi Yang is a man who doesn't do human things, but he has inherited his father's teachings. But don't worry, I won't abandon you no matter what. Qin Yining hugged Pang Xiao's arm and rested her head on his shoulder. She said, I know you are good to me. I just don't think that with his personality, he would do something like this. This seems to be Jiyu Shixiang's doing. Jiyu Chang is Jiyu Shixiang's granddaughter, but Jiyu Shixiang left her in the capital as a hostage and risked the danger of being killed at any time. At this point, Qin Yining sat up and said, perhaps to him, Jiyu Chang is just a woman and not worth cherishing. Pang Xiao nodded and said, don't worry. No matter what others do, my feelings for you will never change. My wife is so good. I wouldn't trade her for a mountain of gold. Qin Yining heard Pang Xiao's words and couldn't help but smile. Thank you, my Wang Yi. Chapter 434. It's broad daylight. What are you talking about? Qin Yining blinked and finally understood what Pang Xiao meant. Her cheeks immediately turned red and she pinched his arm. In Pang Xiao's eyes, her little bit of strength was not much stronger than a mosquito bite. He hugged her slender waist and smelled the faint jasmine fragrance in her hair. Pang Xiao's heart was immediately aroused by her warm and fragrant jade-like body beside him. He moved closer to Qin Yining's neck and took a deep breath. His voice was hoarse as he said, Sister Yi, you smell so good. Qin Yining was so embarrassed that she pushed him away. Don't be like this. We're in a carriage. I know. I'm just hugging you. Pang Xiao stretched out his strong arms and pulled her to sit on his strong legs. His big hands could not help but misbehave. Your body smells so good and soft. I like it so much. Qin Yining panted and pushed his naughty hands away. Don't be like this. Sure, don't make a sound. He searched for her lips and gently bit them. The carriage continued to move forward. The tightly closed curtains blocked the view inside the carriage. When they reached a village and needed to stop for the night, Deputy General Yu Meng was shocked to find that the people sitting in the carriage were no longer Yuqi Yang and Jiyu Shixiang. In a fit of anger, he brandished his sword and was about to kill the substitute. Pang Xiao quickly stepped forward and said, General Yu, please wait. Now that you've killed them, are you not going to investigate the clues? Only then did Yu Meng realize that he had been too impulsive and had almost destroyed all the clues. Thank you for your advice, Wang Yi. The tall northerner, who was almost 40 years old, blushed. He waved his hand and ordered his men to take the two substitutes away for questioning. Wang Yi, what should we do next? The County King of Yang was the one who led the expedition, but he somehow managed to escape. Yu Meng did not dare to make a decision and asked Pang Xiao for his opinion instead. Pang Xiao lowered his gaze and said, right now, we need to quickly track down the whereabouts of the County King of Yang and Jiyu Shixiang. We are not far from the old capital of Dian. This king is worried that the two of them are after the treasure. Secondly, we should quickly report today's situation to your majesty and await your majesty's decision. Yu Meng nodded and said, Wang Yi is right. This general will immediately pass down the order. Pang Xiao did not participate in the interrogation of the two substitutes, as they were the County King of Yang's men. However, anyone with a discerning eye would have known that the two lackeys, who could be easily discarded, would not know anything. However, in order to avoid arousing suspicion, Pang Xiao not only kept his distance, but also ordered his subordinates not to get close. Qin Yining was so tired that she was about to fall asleep. When Pang Xiao returned to the bedroom in the farmhouse where they were temporarily staying, Qin Yining was already lying on her side, half asleep. When she heard the light footsteps, she did not even want to open her eyes. She asked in a soft voice, "You're back? Yu Meng has taken care of everything?" When Pang Xiao heard her naturally seductive voice, his mind began to wander again. When he looked at her coquettish posture when she was lying on her side, his flesh and bones were about to melt. Everything has been taken care of. He sat on the side of Qin Yining's bed, his large hand gently rubbing her back and sliding down suggestively. Qin Yining stared at him reproachfully, a thin layer of mist forming in her large eyes. She looked like a small animal that had been bullied. She said in a wronged tone, "I'm tired." She was usually calm, experienced, and resourceful. She often made people forget that she was, in fact, a young girl. It was rare for her to act coquettishly like this. Now that they were married, she showed her true self in front of him without any reservations. She also had times when she was naughty and lively, and times when she acted coquettishly. Pang Xiao's heart melted into a puddle of water. He lay down beside her and pulled her into his arms. Okay. I don't want it anymore. Let's not do it today. I'll hug you to sleep." Qin Yining pressed her face against his shoulder and nodded tiredly. Not long after, her breathing became even. Pang Xiao lowered his head and looked at her long eyelashes that trembled as she slept. Her cherry lips were slightly opened, and her long black hair that was scattered on the pillow. He liked it so much that he secretly kissed her forehead. Seeing that she was sleeping soundly, he simply spread out his hair and used one hand to wrap his hair around her long hair. He also took a nap. The outside of the village was busy. The 300 dragon stallion army set up camp and started a fire to cook. Yu Meng even brought people to the forest to urgently interrogate the two substitutes. However, this small courtyard in the village was unusually peaceful and quiet. The two substitutes were just scapegoats. How could they get any valuable information from the interrogation? Yu Meng used all his methods and only found out that the two of them were hired by a young man with the surname Lu. He knew nothing else. Yes. Yu Qiyang's servant, who had benefited from it, was called Little Lu. However, Yu Qiyang had already escaped. What was the use of knowing that Yu Qiyang had arranged for Little Lu to hire servants to replace him? If he told Your Majesty would probably scold them and demote them by 3 ranks. Yu Meng was very anxious. However, he was here on the orders of the emperor. He must have his own strengths. He was not someone who could not keep his composure. The next day, Pang Xiao called Huzi over and whispered a few words. In less than 2 hours, the people that Yu Meng sent out to search returned. "General. Fortunately, we did not disappoint. We found the whereabouts of the county king of Yang." "Really?" Yu Meng said in surprise. "Yes. I've already ordered 2 of my brothers to follow in secret." "General, should we depart?" Yu Meng felt that the swaying black veil on his head had finally been saved. Even his smile when facing Pang Xiao became more sincere. "Wang Yi, what do you say?" "Yes. Then let's follow. We'll follow far behind. As for the matter of disaster relief, the imperial envoy has already escaped. We can only put it aside for the time being and wait for Your Majesty's orders." "Yes. Pass down the order. Break camp and depart." Yu Meng obeyed. Pang Xiao wrote a note and sent a carrier pigeon back. When Yu Meng saw that Pang Xiao only sent a letter now, he could not help but be surprised. "Wang Yi didn't send a letter yesterday? Your Majesty is busy with state affairs every day. If Your Majesty has to worry about every single thing, wouldn't we be incompetent subjects? The county king of Yang escaped yesterday and we still have no news of his whereabouts. Sending a letter would only increase Your Majesty's worries. Now that we have news of his whereabouts today, Your Majesty will be furious, but he won't be too worried. Besides, you and I will have some time to prepare." Yu Meng smiled and nodded. However, he was lamenting in his heart. No wonder he can become a prince at such a young age. How can he be so steady in dealing with people? Why don't I have the same mindset? If we only tell Your Majesty that he escaped, Your Majesty will naturally be furious. However, if we tell Your Majesty that he escaped, we'll follow him in secret. Perhaps we'll find the treasure. Your Majesty will definitely praise us for our courage and wisdom. This will make it seem as if they knew each other and intentionally let the County King of Yang escape. This is the true way of a subject. Yu Meng inadvertently demonized Pang Xiao. Chapter 435. The group tailed the County King of Yang and Jiyu Shixiang from afar. They would send scouts to scout ahead from time to time to ensure that they were heading in the right direction. If they noticed that the County King of Yang and Jiyu Shixiang had stopped, the group of over 300 men would stop as well to avoid running into them. They traveled and stopped for 4 or 5 days, and Pang Xiao had sent out a dozen carrier pigeons. Yu Meng would ask about it at first, but Pang Xiao would shoot him a cold glance and dismiss him with a secret report from Your Majesty. Later on, Yu Meng got used to it and didn't even ask anymore. Report. Another group of scouts returned from scouting. They came before Yu Meng's horse and reported in a hushed voice, "General, the County King of Yang and Jiyu Shixiang have entered a cave." Oh! Yu Meng's eyes lit up in excitement. He dismounted from his horse and said, "Did you see it for real? You didn't lose track of them? Are you sure they didn't escape through a tunnel?" "General, we've been following them from afar and did not attract their attention. Now, we have left a few people to guard the area and search for other exits in the surrounding area." "Good, very good." Yu Meng laughed and instructed in a hushed voice, "You've done well. Remember to keep your mouth shut." "Yes, sir." The scout replied gruffly. Yu Meng immediately returned to Pang Xiao's carriage and said, "Wang Yi, I have good news." Pang Xiao got down from the carriage alone when he heard that. "What good news? What's gotten you so excited?" Yu Meng's eyes were filled with excitement as he whispered, "I think we've found the treasure." "What?" The scouts reported that they saw the County King of Yang and his men enter a cave with their own eyes. They've left men to keep watch nearby and have ordered others to search for other exits. Pang Xiao clapped his hands and exclaimed in delight, "Now we've solved Your Majesty's urgent problem. This is great. Our brother's hard work over the past few days was not in vain. Come, let's follow them quietly." When Yu Meng saw that Pang Xiao's first reaction was that she was happy to relieve Your Majesty's worries, he silently remembered it in his heart. Pang Xiao returned to the carriage, wrote another note, and released a carrier pigeon. When Yu Meng saw the carrier pigeon, he smiled and instructed everyone to set off quietly. The carriage rocked gently. Pang Xiao hugged Qin Yining and leaned against the big pillow. She whispered, "Sister Yi, do you think it's okay for us to do this?" Qin Yining smiled and said, "There's nothing wrong with that. If that treasure fell into the hands of an evil person, it could very well become a murder weapon. It would be better to use it for the common people and not waste this treasure stained with the blood and tears of the dying people." "You're right. But aren't you worried that something might go wrong with the Yuchi Yang?" When Pang Xiao asked this, she stared fixedly at Qin Yining's face, as if she wanted to find any clues from her expression. Qin Yining was a smart person. When she heard Pang Xiao's jealous words, she found it very funny. Could it be that her man still minded that she had almost become the empress of the Yuchi Yang? It's true that the County King of Yang is not a completely evil person. But now, we are already on opposing sides. Secondly, he had abandoned his wife, so he can't blame anyone else. It's understandable that he wants to restore his country and obtain the treasures of the incapable ruler. But he chose to use the most despicable method. Qin Yining thought of the Yuchi Yang, who had a strong scholarly aura and was quite righteous. She couldn't help but feel that he had changed. Time and reality were both powerful weapons that could change people. She didn't know when the Yuchi Yang had become so stubborn that he didn't care about family. Pang Xiao hugged Qin Yining and kissed her on the cheek several times. "My sister Yi is always right." Qin Yining was both angry and amused by his words. "I'm telling the truth. Why do you sound like you're forcing yourself to say it? My wife is always right." Pang Xiao began to grope Qin Yining's body restlessly again. Qin Yining couldn't help but sigh softly. After they got married, Pang Xiao seemed to have opened the door to a new world. He only knew how to take her after he tasted her, and he especially liked to stick to her. Qin Yining sometimes even thought that Pang Xiao's clingy behavior reminded her of Da He at home. Wang Yi, the front line has reported that they have found the exit of the cave and have arranged for people to guard it, Yu Meng replied from outside the carriage. Pang Xiao put away the inappropriate thoughts on her face and said energetically, "Very good. Then we should go and take a look." Qin Yining lifted the curtain and got out of the carriage. She looked at the surrounding villages and fields, then raised her head to look at the seemingly familiar mountain in front of her. She said, "This can't be Mount Maro-er, right?" Pang Xiao said, "It is indeed Mount Maro-er. It's rare that you still remember. This place was very close to the old capital of Dian." Qin Yining often came out and walked around, so she naturally remembered this ownerless mountain. However, the reason why Qin Yining was surprised was not because she saw the mountains of Great Yang Dynasty. It was because this mountain was the mountain on the fake map that she had casually drawn back then. After Lu Heng got the treasure map that she made, he came out to look for the treasure. It was said that he was buried when the Earth Dragon turned over. But this was too much of a coincidence. She had casually drawn it and actually found the right mountain. If Lu Heng really found the treasure with her scribbles, then it would be very interesting. Yu Qiyang and Jiyu Shixiang held the lanterns in their hands and slowly walked forward while feeling the uneven walls. Jiyu Shixiang's old voice was filled with excitement, and it echoed loudly in the cave. "Don't worry, I didn't set up any traps here. There won't be any danger. Now that you say it like that, I feel a bit more at ease." Yu Qiyang patted his chest and lifted his spirits to continue walking inside. Yu Qiyang had been pampered since childhood. If he ate a grain of rice less or walked for 2 more hours, he would be earnestly admonished by the eunuchs. This time, he and Jiyu Shixiang had planned to escape. He had followed this old man all the way to this treasure that Li Chitian had spent so much effort to find. How could he sit down and rest? The cave entrance became more and more spacious, and not long after, they arrived at a huge empty space. The lanterns in their hands were swaying in the wind, and the orange flames of the candles flickered. Although the light was not very bright, the two of them could see how rich the gold, silver, and jewels piled up in the large boxes on the ground were. Yu Qiyang carried the lantern and shuttled back and forth among the wooden chests in a daze. She grabbed a string of pearls and placed neatly below them were silver ingots. Looking back, there were at least 20 of these large boxes, and some of them were even filled with priceless gems. How much wealth did Imperial Father take from the people? Chapter 436. Jiyu Shixiang looked at Yu Qiyang, who was sitting on a chest of silver. His nose turned sour, and he couldn't help but cry as he knelt down and said, "Emperor, don't be angry over these trivial matters. Now that we are free and standing on Dian land, and you have this wealth, it is only a matter of time before you make a comeback." This old official believes that in the future, there will be many officials who will work with the emperor to restore our Dian. Yu Qiyang sniffled and stood up emotionally. He supported Jiyu Shixiang with both hands and said, "Beloved official Jiyu, we are very touched by your loyalty. But we are sorry. This time, in order to avoid arousing Li Chitian's suspicion, we were unable to bring Chang'e and the rest of the Jiyu family. Ever since Jiyu Shixiang found him and they secretly planned this operation, Yu Qiyang's heart had not been at peace for a single day. He was tormented by the choice every day. If he left, what would happen to the officials who had followed him? What would happen to Li Yangyang and Jiyu Chang who had never left him? But Jiyu Shixiang's words, "Those who achieve great things do not care about trifles," finally convinced him. Yu Qiyang knew that he wasn't a smart person. He didn't even have the courage of his imperial uncle, Prince Ning. During his time in the Great Zhou Empire, he had lived in humiliation every day. The title that Li Chitian had given him constantly mocked his cowardice. Now that the opportunity to restore the Dian was right in front of him, he wanted to seize it. Because no matter how cowardly he was still a man. However, he didn't care about the lives of the people he had left behind in the capital of the Zhou dynasty in order to appease Li Chitian. Because he wasn't sure how long it would take for him to reach the capital of Da Zhou if he re-established his political power. Perhaps he wouldn't be able to do it in his lifetime. Or perhaps he could do it. But those people had already become the victims of Li Qitian's anger. He didn't even have the chance to find their graves. He felt guilty. But there was nothing he could do. He didn't want to spend the rest of his life in Daju. He was someone who had once been an emperor. How could he allow himself to crawl at the feet of another emperor and beg for his life like a dog? My beloved subject, Your Majesty. Jiyu Shixiang wiped his tears with his sleeve and said in a trembling voice, Your Majesty, you don't need to feel guilty. Not to mention them, even this old official's old bones, as long as it can help Your Majesty achieve great things, what's wrong with tearing them down and crushing them? The lives of us subjects mean nothing. Even if we die, we hope to see the day when the Dian is restored. Your Majesty has always been kind and benevolent. You love your people, but because you are too benevolent, you suffer. These words collided with Yu Qiyang's heart. He was both moved and distressed. Yu Qiyang had never harmed anyone. Perhaps the two worst things he had done in his life were kidnapping Qin Yining and leaving Li Yangyang and Jiyu Chang in Daju's capital, leaving them to fend for themselves. But why couldn't the good people in this world be rewarded? And why did he, a person who devoted his love to painting and landscape, have to be born into the imperial family? If he could be the son of an ordinary family, have a lovely wife and 2 beautiful concubines, study and paint, and have a beautiful wife, how good would that be? Unfortunately, there were no IFS in this world. The cruelest word in this world was IFS. Yu Qiyang took a deep breath and forced a smile, saying, Since we've already come this far, we can't turn back. If we can restore the country in the future, we will record their deeds in detail in the history books. This old official, haha. A burst of hearty laughter suddenly sounded, interrupting Jiyu Shixiang's unfinished words. Jiyu Shixiang and Yu Qiyang looked towards the source of the sound in alarm. They saw a group of people carrying lanterns slowly approaching along the gentle slope. The person in the lead was tall and imposing. The light shone from below onto his handsome face, outlining his deep contours. It also made the arrival of this group of people seem especially sinister. You, Pang Zhishi, Yu Meng, why are you surprised? Pang Xiao sneered and looked at Yu Qiyang with disdain, saying, A man, regardless of whether he succeeds or fails outside, shouldn't step on his own woman's corpse. Can a good-for-nothing like you be called a man? Fortunately, Sister Yi didn't follow you back then. Otherwise, wouldn't she be left behind as a scapegoat? Yu Qiyang's entire body trembled. He couldn't stand steadily and retreated a few steps. His calf tripped over the treasure chest and he fell on it. Jiyu Shixiang's hands trembled. You actually followed us. You can escape, but can't we follow you? Pang Xiao pulled Qin Yining into his arms behind him. His broad palms covered her shoulders and upper arms and rubbed them. Are you cold? Qin Yining said, It's a little cold. In the middle of a group of men, Qin Yining's voice was soft and pleasant. However, in Yu Qiyang's ears, it was like a bell ringing. It shook his brain until it buzzed. The most embarrassing moment of his life had been witnessed by Qin Yining. What if she thought that he was the kind of person who would betray his wife and abandon her? Would she also be glad that she didn't follow him back then, just like Pang Xiao said? But on second thought, that was exactly what he had done. Yu Qiyang was deeply shocked and lowered his head. He couldn't say a word. Pang Xiao cast a sidelong glance at Yu Qiyang. He saw that his originally frightened face had become dazed after seeing Qin Yining. He felt a wave of disgust in his heart. He had clearly done something indecent, yet he was still acting affectionate here. Wasn't he ashamed of himself? Pang Xiao turned back to the entrance of the cave and wrote a note under the dim light of the lamp and the weak sunlight. He tied it to the leg of a carrier pigeon and released it. Then, he called Yu Meng over. General Yu, this king has already sent out the news that the treasure has been found. Since the treasure has been found, let's arrange the transportation. Wang Yi doesn't need to worry about this. Yu Meng smiled and took out a bright yellow imperial edict from his arms. He opened it and said in a deep voice, Your Majesty has decreed. Everyone hurriedly knelt down to listen to the edict. Yu Meng said, by the will of the heavens, the emperor decrees that the excavation and transportation of the treasure will be fully supervised by Yu Meng. Prince Zhongshiren and Princess Consort are tired from the journey and are ordered to rest immediately. They are not allowed to leave without permission and wait for the decree. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining knelt on the ground and raised their heads to look at Yu Meng in shock. Yu Meng smiled and presented the imperial edict with both hands. Wang Yi, accept the edict. Pang Xiao frowned and said, impossible. Your Majesty trusts this king the most. But Your Majesty's decree is here. If Wang Yi doesn't believe it, you can check it yourself. Pang Xiao snatched the imperial edict and opened it to check it anxiously. Then, as if he had received a blow, he lowered his head dejectedly. Chapter 437. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation fan of anger. Pang Xiao gripped the imperial edict tightly and turned to glare at Jiyu Shixiang angrily. Qin Yining spoke first. Old Master Jiyu, you should think about how you feel when all your efforts go to waste. By the way, perhaps you should also think about how you feel when your selfish actions have caused the County King of Yang to fall to such a state. The County King of Yang could have led a peaceful life for the rest of his life, but now it has been completely destroyed by your ambition. Not only have you abandoned your family and children, but you have also harmed your master. How does it feel to suffer a double loss? Does it feel good? You bastard. You flatter me. Compared to you, who climbed up by stepping on my master, I am still far behind. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao helped him to his feet. Jiyu Shixiang choked and coughed. He pounded his chest and breathed heavily. Qin Yining's words hit the nail on the head. An old official like Jiyu Shixiang did not want money. All he wanted was to leave his mark in history. If it were a peaceful time, it would be good to be a virtuous official who assisted a wise ruler. However, it was a chaotic time. If he could be a capable official who set things right, he would be able to show his worth. Ever since Dian fell, he had been thinking about how he could use the treasure to ally with the southern Yang kingdom and push the Yuchi Yang back to the throne. However, he had been frustrated by the lack of an opportunity. All he could do was wait. Now, the opportunity was right in front of him. However, he did not expect to fall for it again this time. Last time, he had been fooled by Qin Yining about the treasure map. This time, he had seen Qin Yining's detestable face again after his failure. He had even been stabbed in the heart by Qin Yining's words. When he turned to look at Yuchi Yang again, Jiyu Shixiang was shocked to find that the Yuchi Yang was looking at him with suspicion and suspicion. Jiyu Shixiang's heart skipped a beat. The Yuchi Yang had heard Qin Yining's provocative word. Originally, the two of them had been caught on the spot, and the future situation was already unpredictable. Who would have thought that Qin Yining would succeed in sowing discord with just a few words? Moreover, he had contributed the loyal Yuchi Yang, and they were actually willing to listen to Qin Yining. Femme fatale, she was truly a source of calamity. Jiyu Shixiang's vision went black, and his body went limp and fell to the ground. Seeing this, Yuchi Yang, who was originally angry, hurriedly went to help her up. Old Master Jiyu, are you all right? Master Jiyu. Seeing that Jiyu Shixiang had really fainted, no matter how angry Yuchi Yang was with the old man, he was still one of them. Yuchi Yang raised his head abruptly and glared at Qin Yining. In the dim cave, it was as if two clusters of fire had been ignited in his eyes. Why are you doing this? Now that you've climbed up the social ladder, you can live a carefree life. Don't tell me that just because you're living a good life, you can treat people from your homeland with righteousness. No wonder the books say that only women and villains are difficult to deal with. You're really ungrateful. I think you've already forgotten that you're a Dian. Yuchi Yang's roar was hysterical, and in such a leisurely space like the cave, his voice sounded particularly sharp. Qin Yining's face darkened, and he sneered, "Do you still know what you're saying? Don't push the blame for the consequences of your cowardice and incompetence onto others. Do you really think that you're not to blame just because you say that others are to blame? I'm indeed a woman, but I've done nothing wrong. I wouldn't throw my own woman out to take the blame. You Yu Qiyang pointed at Qin Yining angrily, but he couldn't say anything to defend himself. Qin Yining sneered again, and he didn't want to say another word to Yu Qiyang. She was very glad that she didn't consider the future of her family and climb up the social ladder. Otherwise, with such a man, she would have collapsed first without anyone else doing anything. Pang Xiao saw that Qin Yining had made Yu Qiyang speechless, and his mood was even better than when he was conferred the title of king. He took Qin Yining in his arms and turned to Yu Meng, who had been watching the scene for a long time, and said, "Although there's an imperial edict, this king is your majesty's sworn brother, so there are still some suggestions that need to be made. First, we should immediately notify the local government to send troops to surround the area to prevent chaos midway. Second, we need to wait for the troops to arrive and receive His Majesty's orders before we can start moving." Yu Meng put on a fake smile and cupped his hands. "Wang Yi, you don't need to worry about this. Your Majesty has instructed this general to take care of everything. This general knows what to do." "You know what to do." Pang Xiao sneered. "I think you want to take the opportunity to steal your Majesty's treasure. Don't you dare slander me." Yu Meng roared angrily. "Although this general's rank is not as high as Wang Yi's, this general's loyalty to your Majesty can be witnessed by heaven and earth. Wang Yi is only making such conjectures about this general. What are your intentions? General Yu, there's no need to be so anxious. A straight foot is not afraid of a crooked shadow. If you really don't covet His Majesty's treasure, then you should act freely and let others see. But you insist on acting arbitrarily, so it's hard not to make this prince suspicious. This general is acting on your Majesty's orders. Wang Yi has already received the imperial edict. From now on, Wang Yi only needs to take Wang Fei and the attendants to wait for orders and wait for the new edict. Wang Yi does not need to worry about anything else." Pang Xiao fell silent at Yu Meng's words. His fists hanging by his side were tightly clenched. It was as if he could suppress all the irritation and anger in his heart. "If you do this, this king will definitely take back your Majesty." "All right, Wang Yi, go ahead. Do you have enough carrier pigeons? If not, this general can lend them to you." "Ha." Yu Meng looked at Pang Xiao's deflated appearance and immediately laughed excitedly and arrogantly. He waved his hand and ordered the dragon stallion army to come in and count the silver in the chests. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining were pushed to the corner. Seeing the soldiers busy in full swing, Pang Xiao said, "Fine, let's go up first." Qin Yining also nodded. Who knew that just as they were about to walk up the slope and return to the ground, Yu Meng stopped them. "Wang Yi, please wait." Pang Xiao turned around. "What is it?" "Your Majesty's edict is for Wang Yi to wait for orders." "What does wait for orders mean? Wang Yi can't not understand, right?" Yu Meng smiled meaningfully. Hearing this, Pang Xiao controlled himself and said, "Wang Fei's body is weak and can't stand the cold underground. She told us to wait for orders. She did not say that we had to wait for orders. Wang Yi is going against the imperial edict. If you do this, it will be very difficult for this general." Yu Meng's voice had barely faded when Pang Xiao gave him a tight slap on the face. "Pa." A crisp sound. Yu Meng's head tilted from the slap. He looked at Pang Xiao in disbelief. "Why did you hit me? This won't be difficult, right?" "What? This king doesn't want to live in the hole. You tried to persuade him, but this king didn't listen and even hit you. You can go and tell your Majesty that you won't have to take the blame. This won't be difficult, right?" Pang Xiao clenched his fists, and his iron fists cracked. Chapter 438. Pang Xiao sneered, "Thank you for the compliment. Compared to shameless methods, this king is inferior to General Yu. You. When did I act shamelessly? You detained your Majesty's treasures and pretended to be your Majesty's most trusted subordinate. You used your military authority to smuggle the treasures and refused to admit it. You even pinned the blame on this king. If this isn't shamelessness, what is? You're slandering me." Yu Meng was so angry that he stomped his feet. He pointed at Pang Xiao and scolded, "Don't think that you're so great just because you're Wang Yi. Who doesn't know your background? Now that you don't have military authority, you're still so arrogant. Who knows how arrogant you were in front of your majesty when you led the tiger army? No wonder your majesty stripped you of your military authority. These words had truly pierced Pang Xiao's heart. If the previous words were all an act, the emotions triggered by this sentence came from the heart. The tiger army was Pang Xiao's painstaking effort. The soldiers and generals in it were all brothers who had gone through life and death together. Even the most open-minded person would not be willing to be transferred by Li Chitian with just one sentence, let alone someone like Pang Xiao who was suspected all day long. Pang Xiao's face darkened. He did not continue to argue with Yu Meng. He only pulled Qin Yining's hand and pushed Yu Meng away. Get out of the way. Ah, you can't go out. Pang Xiao ignored them. Whoever blocked the way, he pushed them away with force. His strength combined with some internal energy. The few people from the Dragon Stallion army could not stop him. Yu Meng hurriedly ordered a few people to follow. After Pang Xiao and Qin Yining went out, they did not go far. Instead, they returned to the carriage to rest. It was as if everything in the cave had nothing to do with them. In the carriage, Qin Yining leaned on Pang Xiao's shoulder and caressed his long, calloused hand. Don't be angry. It's not worth being angry with these people. I know. Pang Xiao lowered her eyes and played with Qin Yining's hand. Qin Yining said with a smile, you don't have to feel regretful. Even if you don't have military power, you and your brothers have been through blood and tears together. How can it be gone just like that? As long as everyone is still around, there will definitely be a day when we can fight side by side. These words were spoken in Pang Xiao's heart. He looked up at Qin Yining, who was smiling sweetly in front of him, and couldn't help but smile. Why do you always know everything when it comes to you? Naturally, it's because I have thought things through. Qin Yining smiled lightly. Pang Xiao stretched out his arms and hugged Qin Yining. He kissed her cheek. Luckily, I have you by my side. Otherwise, I'm afraid I would have hurt you. I know you wouldn't. Qin Yining rubbed against Pang Xiao's chest. You are a rational person. You know what you are doing and what you should do. That's why I'm not worried at all. With someone by his side who understood and trusted him like this, Pang Xiao felt an indescribable warmth in his heart. He couldn't help but smile contentedly. Luckily, there was someone by his side at this time. Li Chitian continued to receive messenger pigeons. It was only after he read the latest 2 pieces of paper that he was finally able to put his heart at ease. The first message was from Pang Xiao. It meant that the treasure had been found, but he suspected that Yu Meng would embezzle the treasure. He asked Your Majesty to quickly deploy troops to guard it to prevent outsiders from taking advantage of the situation. He also complained a little about why Your Majesty did not trust him. The second message was from Yu Meng. The message was simple and to the point. The treasure had been found, and they were in the process of checking and preparing to move it out. Your Majesty would probably receive the treasure in half a month. In addition, Prince Zhongshiren and Wang Fei are not far from the cave entrance and have not left. Prince Zhongshiren does not trust this humble subject, but his loyalty to Your Majesty is real. For Li Chitian, this was equivalent to 2 simultaneous happy events. The treasure had been found. This time, the matter of the treasure made him understand that he had been narrow-minded. Pang Xiao was still very loyal to him. Li Chitian carefully read the note several times before finally burning it with the candle flame. He took a deep breath. He finally had a large sum of money. The matter of disaster relief could be relaxed. Maybe he could even leave a large sum of money for future needs. Li Chitian's mood was good. Even the days of the court officials were relaxed. The Jing city was harmonious. Compared to the Jing city, although Pang Xiao and Qin Yining's living conditions were checked, they were in a very good mood. Thanks to the imperial edict, His Majesty ordered them to stay put and wait for orders. Pang Xiao had no choice but to stay put and wait for orders. Because they were counting the treasures in the cave and they had to transport them out one by one, it was really troublesome. He couldn't directly take Qin Yining to live in the carriage, so he ordered his subordinates to build a triangular hut not far away. Qin Yining was used to living in the mountains. With the help of Pang Xiao's subordinates, They did not have to worry about food, clothing, shelter, and transportation. Their days were very comfortable. Under the surveillance of the dragon stallion army arranged by Yu Meng, Qin Yining even pulled Pang Xiao to pick wild vegetables and hunt. Pang Xiao held a bow in one hand and put his other hand on Qin Yining's shoulder. "Sister Yi, it would be good if we could live such leisurely days in the future." Chapter 439. When Li Chitian received the report from Pang Xiao's last carrier pigeon, he had mixed feelings. After finding the treasure, apart from the first carrier pigeon, Pang Xiao, complaining about why he wasn't trusted, the rest of the carrier pigeons reported the details of the treasure step by step. Even when the treasure was all moved out and ready to be transported, he didn't forget to carefully count the exact number of treasures to prevent any corruption during the transportation. Combined with Yu Meng's report, although Pang Xiao was domineering and insolent, and even hit people, there was no doubt about his loyalty. Li Chitian even sometimes began to reflect on whether he had treated Pang Xiao too harshly. However, now that he had finally found this large amount of treasure, although the national treasury couldn't be filled with this amount of money, it was enough to solve his immediate problems. This amount of money was enough to feed the Tiger Army and Dragon Stallion Army for 5 years. With such a large amount of treasure in hand, Li Chitian could finally let out a sigh of relief. He could even sleep soundly now. Li Chitian walked around the big desk covered with a yellow tablecloth. He rubbed his sweaty palms as he walked towards the open door. The extremely clean black marble floor was so shiny that it could reflect one's reflection. Li Chitian didn't make any sound of footsteps. The servants in front of the door lowered their heads even more respectfully and bowed. Outside the open door was a spacious square. One could see the white stone floor, red walls, and bright tiles, as well as the blue sky with white clouds. Taking a deep breath, his body and mind were happy and refreshed. "Come. This servant is here." Li Guanwen immediately smiled and bowed. Li Chitian smiled and said, "Summon Minister Qin to see me." "Yes." Li Guanwen immediately went to pass on the decree. When Qin Huayuan came, he was full of questions. However, when facing Li Chitian, he only kowtowed and listened to his orders. Li Chitian smiled and said, "In the past, I felt that Prince Zhongshuren was naughty and mischievous. Now, it seems that with Minister Qin as his father-in-law, Pang Zhishi has become much more restrained. It can be seen that Minister Qin has taught him well." Qin Huayuan's heart was filled with suspicion, but he still waved his hand in shame. He bowed and said, "Your Majesty is too kind. How can this old official accept such praise? Although Prince Zhongshan is reckless and irritable, and has some old grudges with this humble official, now that we have become family, this old official should properly remind you whether it is out of loyalty to the emperor or out of consideration for my daughter." Qin Huayuan's words were well controlled. He didn't exaggerate to boast about his loyalty, nor did he hypocritically say that he was only loyal to the country. Instead, he mixed half of the truth and half of the lies, making others feel that he was sincere. Li Chitian had been paying more and more attention to Qin Huayuan. It wasn't only because of Qin Huayuan's talent, but also because his appearance was very pleasing to the eye. In addition, when Qin Huayuan was in the Dian, he had cheated the incapable ruler of BG. Li Chitian, as the one who started the rebellion, wasn't completely disgusted with Qin Huayuan. Now that he thought about the past, Li Chitian deeply felt that Qin Huayuan had been delayed by that incapable ruler of Dian. He had wasted his good years and was actually born in the Dian to be loyal to that kind of person. If he had been born a few decades earlier and this person had been under his command, then it would have been a completely different situation. Li Chitian smiled and instructed Li Guanwen to give Qin Huayuan a seat. Unexpectedly, he also circled around and sat down with Qin Huayuan. Qin Huayuan was overwhelmed by the favor and only dared to sit half of his body to the side. Li Chitian smiled and said, "Today, we have called you here for no other reason than to tell you an important matter. Your Majesty, please speak. The treasure has been found. Now, we just need to wait for our decree to transport it back to the capital." As Li Chitian spoke, he carefully observed Qin Huayuan's expression. When he saw Qin Huayuan's eyes widen in surprise, the last bit of doubt in his heart disappeared. It's the treasure from Dian. Beloved official Qin, what do you think? This question was asked very skillfully. He didn't say what he thought and only said this sentence. Whether or not he could answer to Li Qitian's satisfaction would depend on Qin Huayuan's ability to figure out his intentions. Your Majesty, Qin Huayuan stood up and respectfully bowed. That money is said to be a treasure, but in reality, it is the last bit of wealth that the retired emperor of the Yang dynasty plundered from the people. It is the evidence of his crime of not giving the common people a way to live. That sum of money, whether buried underground or used to satisfy the selfish desires of some people, was not the most appropriate place to go. This subject believes that only by using that money on the common people can the sin on that money be eliminated. At this point, Qin Huayuan raised his head to look at Li Qitian and continued to bow. This subject believes that Your Majesty being able to find that treasure is the will of the heavens. The heavens also know that Your Majesty is a wise ruler who is wholeheartedly thinking of the common people. At that time, when the southern land dragon overturned the situation, plague wreaked havoc, and the common people were left homeless, the heavens opened a door for the common people. This treasure was found and disposed of by Your Majesty. It is truly the will of the heavens. Qin Huayuan's expression was solemn, and every word was sonorous and forceful. And these words, as expected, tickled the bottom of Li Qitian's heart. They hit the spot that he was itching for the most. Only when one truly became an emperor would one understand what it meant to be lonely at the top. Standing at this high position, he had to be responsible for all those who followed him. Everyone, his officials, subjects, and even his mother, had always wanted something from him, but no one could truly understand him. However, the words that touched his heart the most were spoken by his official. And it was a Dian official who had surrendered. He was the most awkward existence in Daju's imperial court. Perhaps it was because Li Qitian had obtained the treasure that he could finally put down the huge rock that had been pressing down on his heart. Li Qitian had also become more considerate of others. He was even more moved by Qin Huayuan's words. Beloved official Qin. Li Qitian supported Qin Huayuan with both hands and patted his arm, moved. We did not misjudge you. We have obtained the treasure this time, and we intend to take it and use it for the common people. It can also be considered as adding some merit to the common people who had once suffered. Qin Huayuan nodded heavily. When he looked at Li Qitian, his gaze and demeanor perfectly expressed the obedience and faint admiration of a loyal official towards a princess. Just one look at him was more comforting than 2 hours of flattery. Beloved official Qin, since we have found the treasure, what do you think we should do next? Qin Huayuan heard this and considered carefully for a moment. Then he said, this official believes that there are 3 things we should do. First, order Prince Zhongshiren, Princess, the County King of Yang, and Old Master Jiyu to be on standby. Arrange for people to be stationed and watch over them to prevent any leaks. Second, order Prince Consort Ji's people to go out of the city to provide support to prevent any unforeseen events from occurring. Third, begin to plan for the use of the treasure and release appropriate rumors to create momentum. Qin Huayuan's suggestions were very clear, but he did not say all of them. This gave Li Qitian enough time to think. This way of giving suggestions was the best way to show one's sincerity. It was also the best way to prevent others from thinking that he was trying to influence the choices of others. Li Qitian nodded repeatedly. He could already feel Qin Huayuan's sincerity. After thinking for a moment, he asked, Beloved official, you said that Prince Zhongshiren and his people should be on standby. How long should they be on standby? Qin Huayuan said bluntly, when Your Majesty's people arrive to receive the treasure, that is enough. Li Qitian thought for a moment. There was something he wanted to ask, but in the end, he did not immediately ask. He really wanted to say that Pang Xiao and Qin Yining were Qin Huayuan's son-in-law and daughter. Did he not care that they were suffering where they were? But after thinking about it carefully, Li Qitian understood. Qin Huayuan was a transparent person. Not only could this ensure that the secret would not be leaked, it could also remove all suspicions of Pang Xiao and his wife. This was also the effect of avoiding suspicion. Li Chitian didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he shook his head. He did not feel the slightest bit of disgust towards Qin Huayuan's actions. If Qin Huayuan was too selfless and did not favor his children at all, Li Chitian would have doubted this person's loyalty. But now, Qin Huayuan felt more real. Li Chitian quickly ordered his men to deliver the message at top speed. When Qin Yining, Pang Xiao, and the others received the news, they were roasting meat around a bonfire with Huzi, Jiyun, and Bing Tang. Qin Yining had truly survived in the mountains and suffered hardships. She actually liked this kind of life where she returned to her natural state. Especially her ability to survive in the wild. Pang Xiao and Pang Xiao's guards were filled with admiration. In the mountains, she could always choose the best path. She knew what fruits were tasty and what wild vegetables were edible. Furthermore, she was not inferior to a hunter at all when it came to hunting. She was even better than Pang Xiao's guards. Qin Yining's skin was now completely new. There were no traces of the wind and rain that had been left behind. But seeing Qin Yining like this, Pang Xiao felt even more heartache. "Wang Yi, someone is coming from the foot of the mountain," the guard said softly. Pang Xiao nodded and said, "I heard." The 300 dragon stallion army soldiers guarding the foot of the mountain had already decided on shifts. At this time, they led the messenger up the mountain to see Yu Meng. Not far away, Yu Qiyang and Jiyu Shixiang, who were tied up, as well as the 20 or so attendants they brought, all looked nervously in the direction of the messenger. Yu Meng went forward to receive Li Chitian's secret edict. After reading it twice, he turned back with a smile. "Your Majesty's edict orders Prince Zhongshiren, his wife, and their attendants to be on standby. The Duke of Shenyang and Jiyu Shixiang should also be on standby. As for the rest..." Yu Meng made a throat-slitting gesture. The guards beside him immediately went to capture Jiyu Shixiang and Yu Qiyang and brought them to Pang Xiao and Qin Yining's side. Those who had followed Yu Qiyang here, including little Lu Zi, all screamed out in fear and despair. "No, no! Duke, save us. We didn't do anything. We're innocent. Save us." In the end, these people's screams were covered by the Dragon Stallion army soldiers who were carrying out the punishment and dragged them away. Very quickly, those people came back and stood behind Yu Meng. If one looked carefully, they would see that all of their faces were stained with blood. "No, no, no!" Yu Qiyang shook his head and closed his eyes in pain. He muttered, "It shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't be like this. They're all innocent. Innocent." Yu Meng laughed coldly. "You saw it with your own eyes. You can't take it anymore? Then why don't you think about your wife in the capital?" Chapter 440. Yu Meng came from a military background and despised men like the county king of Yang who were spineless. He laughed coldly and mocked, "You don't know? If the county king of Yang isn't stupid, you should have seen this when you left. You submitted to your majesty and your majesty treated you as a subject. Your family was treated as the family of a subject and naturally took care of you. However, you rebelled and coaxed your majesty to let you out with sweet words. You came out to find the treasure and tried to take it all for yourself. You even tried to rebel and proclaim yourself emperor. Are you worthy of your majesty's trust? When you were emperor, you were a fatuous ruler. Your subjects didn't have enough to eat or wear. When you were a subject, you rebelled and didn't even care about the person who slept next to you. Now that you've seen blood, you're scared? What were you doing earlier?" Yu Qiyang's face was pale from the scolding. His lips moved and he couldn't speak. Yu Meng finally felt better. He turned to Pang Xiao who had a cold expression and said, "Wang Yi, your majesty wants you and the princess consort to continue to be on standby. You will also be in charge of guarding these two people." Pang Xiao's face was dark. He snatched the imperial edict from Yu Meng's hand and skimmed through it quickly. He seemed to be sure that this was your majesty's intention and not something that Yu Meng made up. Only then did he suppress his anger and say, "Yes." Yu Meng left 20 Dragon Stallion army soldiers behind. "You will stay here and protect Wang Yi. The rest of you, Follow me back to the capital. Yes. A group of people took care of escorting the long convoy and set off. To avoid suspicion, Pang Xiao only brought Huzi and 4 Jinghu Wei with him this time. Qin Yining only brought Bing Tang, Ji Yun, and Young Man with him. The 20 Dragon Stallion army soldiers stayed behind in the name of protecting Pang Xiao. In truth, they stayed behind to guard Pang Xiao's group. They were afraid that they would wander around and reveal the secret of the treasure. Qin Yining rested his head on Pang Xiao's shoulder and frowned with a grave expression. Li Qitian had finally shed all pretense of cordiality with Pang Xiao. Although he didn't show any disrespect to Pang Xiao on the surface, what did Li Qitian actually do? Reducing his military power and placing him in the cabinet, but not fully trusting him and not putting him in an important position. It wasn't easy for him to be used for the disaster relief work, but when he arranged for Pang Xiao to supervise Yu Qiyang, he brought her along as well. Everyone knew that she was once the Yu Qiyang's empress candidate. Although no one knew that it was Pang Xiao who used a trick to force the Yu Qiyang to let go, anyone with a brain would know that Pang Xiao and the Yu Qiyang didn't get along well. Wasn't this arrangement during the disaster relief work deliberately causing trouble for Pang Xiao and the Yu Qiyang? Now, it was even better. Pang Xiao had been completely isolated and abandoned after finding the treasure. Even Yu Meng, a small general who was inferior to Pang Xiao in terms of military exploits and titles, dared to challenge Pang Xiao in front of him. Given the current situation, she had no choice but to think about the future. She had to think about how she could protect Pang Xiao and the people around her. Li Qitian was an ungrateful person who turned his back on others. If she trusted him, she could only wait for death. Sister Yi. Pang Xiao tilted his head and looked at Qin Yining. She obediently leaned against his shoulder. When he lowered his head, he could see her fluttering eyelashes and delicate nose. Pang Xiao couldn't help but reach out and touch her cheek. Are you scared? Qin Yining finally came back to her senses. The people around them looked at her worriedly. When she thought about how she was leaning on Pang Xiao's shoulder as if there was no one else around her and even forgot that there were other people around her, she felt uncomfortable. I'm fine. I'm just a little tired. Then go sleep for a while. We don't have anything else to do now anyway. We still have to wait for Your Majesty's decree before we can continue with the disaster relief work. I don't know how the food preparation is going. When they left the capital, Li Qitian didn't arrange any food to accompany them at all. Although it was called disaster relief, he only arranged for 300 Dragon Stallion army soldiers to follow them. It was more like he was escorting criminals. Pang Xiao knew that the national treasury was empty. Li Qitian might not be able to take out so much food in such a short period of time. He still needed time to prepare it and send it over later. Moreover, Li Qitian must have guessed that Yu Qiyang must have a way to find the treasure when he returned to Dian. Now that his and Qin Yining's speculations were confirmed one by one, his mood was not good. Qin Yining's plan was meticulous. He had completely guessed Li Qitian's thoughts. However, Pang Xiao sometimes really hoped that they were measuring the heart of a gentleman with their own mean measure. Qin Yining stood up and walked towards the newly built bamboo shelter. Unexpectedly, as soon as he took a step, Yu Qiyang, who had been looking down, shouted, "Don't go." Qin Yining turned around and looked at Yu Qiyang in surprise. Yu Qiyang's white hair was messy, his face was pale, and his eyes were bloodshot. His face was full of tears, and he looked a little crazy. The image that appeared in his mind was the elegant young master that he had first met at Prince Ning's mansion. Qin Yining couldn't even connect the two of them together. Go and rest. Pang Xiao looked at Qin Yining with concern. Then, he ordered the Dragon Stallion army soldiers, go and make arrangements for the county king of Yang and old master Ji Yu. Keep a close eye on them. The mountains are dangerous. Don't let them wander around. Yes. The few of them replied respectfully. The Dragon Stallion army had once guarded the northern borders. Although they were Ji Ziyu's soldiers, these northern men's military discipline was not inferior to the tiger armies. They were also curious and respectful of Pang Xiao, the god of war. Not to mention, Pang Xiao's domineering way of doing things and their interactions along the way. Although Your Majesty no longer trusted Pang Xiao as much, in the hearts of these people, Pang Xiao had always been the god of war. Their duty was to protect and guard. However, they were willing to listen to Pang Xiao's orders. Therefore, the few of them worked together to carry Yu Qiyang and Jiyu Shixiang, who were tied up like dumplings, to a tent not far away and locked them up. Qin Yining returned to the bamboo shed and hugged his blanket to rest. Not long after, Pang Xiao came in as well. The guards and attendants were used to seeing how Pang Xiao doted on his wife. They didn't find it strange when the two of them returned in broad daylight. Everyone gathered around the fire to roast meat and chat. Only a few dragon stallion army soldiers would occasionally stretch their necks to take a look. As long as Pang Xiao didn't run away, it was fine. Pang Xiao used a bamboo raft to block the entrance. The entire triangular bamboo shed was sealed off from all sides. Only the sun shone in through the gaps between the bamboo. Looking from the dark, one could see the dust flying in the air. Qin Yining hugged his thin blanket and smiled at Pang Xiao. Pang Xiao couldn't help but smile. He took off his outer robe, kicked off his boots, and laid down on the thick mattress and mat. He then hugged Qin Yining's delicate body and the blanket. Wang Yi, are they all roasting meat? He was asking if there was anyone eavesdropping outside. Pang Xiao didn't answer immediately. Instead, he closed his eyes and focused on his hearing. After listening carefully, he said, "They are all roasting meat." Chapter 441. Although the people from the Green Sky Alliance are a bunch of mobs, they still have some courage and morale. Although there are only 6 people from the Silver Mask Spies, they are all elites. They knew that there were close to 300 people from the Dragon Legion Corps escorting the treasure, and they also knew the estimated time of the return journey. They will definitely make a detailed plan on where to strike and what time to strike. Therefore, I feel that there is no need to worry about this. Pang Xiao's words were very soft, and every word was just a whisper. Her hot breath blew into Qin Yining's ears, causing her to shiver. Qin Yining wanted to raise her hands to rub her ears, but her arms were wrapped in the blanket and were being hugged by Pang Xiao. She could only rub her head against Pang Xiao's shoulder. Pang Xiao laughed softly. She felt that Qin Yining was like a cute little animal, and she could not help but love her. Qin Yining did not know what Pang Xiao was thinking. She was analyzing the current situation. After a while, she whispered into Pang Xiao's ear, "The people from the Silver Mask Spies are more loyal, but the people from the Green Sky Alliance might not be." "Oh." Qin Yining lowered her voice even more and said, "Back then, the leader of the Green Sky Alliance was my grandmother. She only did that because she wanted to take revenge. After taking revenge, she did not want to participate in this matter anymore. Maybe she also saw that the Green Sky Alliance was difficult to control, so she left and handed the Green Sky Alliance to me. Although I am the leader of the Green Sky Alliance, and if something happens in the Alliance, they might come to me for help or even be the scapegoat. However, in reality, if I tell them to do something, if it does not benefit them, they will not help. They were once rebels in Dian, and they did not settle down in Daju. All of them are doing business with the Tatan at the border. They are only so obedient because they can earn some money this time. But I really don't have confidence in their loyalty." Pang Xiao now completely understood. She kissed Qin Yining's temples and comforted him in a low voice, "It's okay, it's not your fault. My men are being watched and can't act rashly. I can only rely on your men. This is also a helpless action. It's better to use them than to watch the treasure fall into Li Qitian's hands. Actually, I'm also conflicted. If you don't do anything, I'm afraid Li Qitian won't be willing to spend much of this money on the common people, and will use it to enrich the army, which will be disadvantageous to you. That's why I decided to steal the treasure in secret. No matter if it's an aristocratic family or Li Qitian, we can't let them get their hands on this wealth for no reason. With it in our hands, we can at least guarantee that this money will be used in the right way." If there was a day where they had to shed all pretense of cordiality, they would have some confidence. But sometimes, I feel guilty. Qin Yining sighed softly. In this situation, in order to survive, in order to protect the people around her, she couldn't seem to find any other way. Pang Xiao could actually understand Qin Yining's feelings, because she felt the same way. But now, they were not only representing their own lives, they were also responsible for the people who followed them, so it was impossible for them not to think about it. Don't think too much. We also have no other choice. If we succeed, it'll be good, but if we fail, we'll just have to deal with whatever comes our way. Pang Xiao murmured in a low voice, but this time, I feel the most at ease going out. Because you're by my side. Qin Yining also smiled. Yes, fortunately I came with you. Otherwise, I don't know how worried I would be. He kissed her neck, and Qin Yining chuckled and dodged. The two of them played around for a while, then closed their eyes to rest. Although Qin Yining looked like he was asleep, his mind was still working quickly. In fact, she was still worried. If they couldn't successfully seize the treasure, it would be fine if they could escape. If they couldn't escape and were captured, one or two of them, then things would be troublesome. If they succeeded in seizing the treasure, it would be better if they didn't comply with Li Qiqian's wishes. But she was also worried that once the treasure was in her hands, there would be a conflict between the Qingtian alliance and the silver-masked spies. The silver-masked spies that Li Qiqian knew in the capital didn't dare to act rashly, and the 4 spies she brought with her were limited. So this time, she contacted the 6 spies that she could currently contact outside. These 6 people were highly skilled in martial arts and had received professional training. If there was a conflict, it was still unknown whether the Qingtian alliance, which had more people, would win or the silver-masked spies, who were highly skilled in martial arts, would win. Qin Yining could only pray that such a thing wouldn't happen. They didn't have any carrier pigeons now, and under the surveillance of so many people, they couldn't contact the outside world. In this completely isolated situation, they could only wait. Soon, half a month had passed. The weather became hot, and there were more mosquitoes in the forest. It had been nearly 2 months since the Earth Dragon turned over. The disaster relief team was actually trapped in the forest by Li Qiqian's imperial edict because of the treasure. Although their lives were inconvenient, their daily lives were still guaranteed. However, Qin Yining was bitten by a poisonous mosquito the day before yesterday, and there was a very hard lump on her wrist. It was itchy and painful, and the wound was also infected and inflamed. In the following 2 days, she had a low fever. Sister Yi, how do you feel? Pang Xiao held a round fan in one hand to help Qin Yining fan, and the other hand lovingly rubbed her palm and fingers. Qin Yining smiled and said, "Don't be so nervous. You're not that delicate. You were just bitten by a mosquito and got infected. It's not a big deal. It's all my fault. If only I didn't bring you out. You can stay at home, and you don't have to live in a forest full of mosquitoes." Pang Xiao was annoyed, and her resentment towards Li Qiqian increased. Don't let your imagination run wild. Are there only mosquitoes in the mountain? What's more, we also brought Bing Tang with us. With her here, we can rest assured. Pang Xiao nodded and said with some relief, "Fortunately, you brought Bing Tang with you. At first, who would have thought that we would be trapped in the mountain for such a long time? Now the weather is hot, and there are a lot of mosquitoes, snakes, and ants. It's fine for us rough men, but you're weak, and you suffered with us for nothing." Qin Yining opened her arms and looked at her man with a smile. Sometimes this man was like a child, but now he looked more like a large dog that had been kicked. When he saw her open her arms to hug him, the smile and joy in his eyes infected her. Pang Xiao put his hands on her sides and buried his face in her soft shoulders and chest. His whole body was surrounded by her elegant fragrance, and he couldn't help but take a few deep breaths. "Sister Yi, you smell so good." Qin Yining hugged his head and shoulders with both hands. When she heard what he said, she couldn't help but blush. She said angrily, "Nonsense. I didn't put on any perfume. How can it smell good?" Living in the mountains, Qin Yining rarely put on makeup. Pang Xiao didn't believe her. He buried himself in her arms and took a few deep breaths. He said, "It's not perfume. It's you who smells good. Your body smells good. He said it so confidently that Qin Yining's face became hot, but she still couldn't bear to let go. She really enjoyed the moment when she was quietly hugging Pang Xiao. Wang Yi. An imperial edict has arrived. Whose exclamation outside the bamboo raft broke the silence. Chapter 442. When Qin Yining suddenly stood up, she was still a bit dizzy. She held onto the door frame of the bamboo shed to catch her breath. Only then did her vision not turn black. Pang Xiao walked a few steps and found that Qin Yining did not follow. Seeing her holding onto the door frame in discomfort, she hurriedly turned back and worriedly supported her. "How are you? Are you dizzy?" "It's okay. I'm a bit dizzy, but I'll be fine after standing for a while." Pang Xiao's brows were tightly furrowed in worry. She supported Qin Yining as they walked forward. In recent days, Prince Zhengxian's consort had fallen ill. All the guards and the dragon stallion army knew. Because they got along with Pang Xiao and Qin Yining day and night, they found that Pang Xiao and Qin Yining were very easy to get along with. They never put on airs in front of them, nor did they put on a sour face in front of them. They also didn't vent their anger on others easily. Therefore, their impression of Pang Xiao and his wife had changed. Such a delicate beauty had been trapped in the mountains and suffered for half a month. They did not feel good about it. Therefore, when they saw Pang Xiao supporting Qin Yining out, everyone was very sympathetic. The one who came to deliver the imperial edict was a guard. When he opened the imperial edict, everyone knelt on the ground. The contents of the imperial edict were very simple. Prince Zhengxian was ordered to bring Princess Consort to the disaster area and have full authority to deal with disaster relief. The county king of Yang and Jiyu Shixiang were to be escorted to the capital. Pang Xiao kowtowed to receive the edict. She smiled and asked the guard, "Your Majesty has received the treasure, right?" The guard grimaced and shook his head. "Your Majesty did not receive the treasure. The people that Prince Consort Ji sent to receive the treasure were almost at the disaster area, but they did not meet the person transporting the treasure. The treasure disappeared into thin air. Even General Yu Meng and the Dragon Stallion army who were escorting the treasure disappeared along with it." "What?" Pang Xiao's eyes widened in shock. How could the treasure disappear into thin air? This king saw the treasure being packed and transported with his own eyes. He only let them depart after ensuring that nothing would go wrong. Could it be Yu Meng? The guard shook his head and sighed. Your Majesty was furious. He did not sleep after receiving the news. He arranged for me to deliver the imperial edict to Wang Yi. Your Majesty asked me to remind Wang Yi. Please go ahead. Pang Xiao was all ears. Your Majesty knew that Wang Yi's a truly capable person. Wang. Your Majesty knew that Wang is a capable person. Your Majesty knew so. But His Majesty believes that His Highness will have a solution. What did he mean? They had waited here for more than half a month. The time for relief was late. Could it be that Li Qitian did not arrange for extra people to go to the disaster area? She knew that Li Qitian did not have money. But as an emperor, even if he did not have money, he could not be heartless. It had been almost 2 months since the Earth Dragon turned over. They relied on the local officials to maintain order. There was no food, no medicine, and no money. What would the people in the disaster area eat and drink? There were also the people buried under the ruins when the Earth Dragon turned over. They could have survived, but they might have lost their lives because of the delay in the rescue. But Li Qitian was still focused on the treasure. He did not care about the lives of the people. After delaying for so long, he did not arrange for people to go to the disaster area to comfort the people. Now, he sent Pang Xiao to the disaster area to comfort the people. But he was thick-skinned and asked Pang Xiao to comfort the people by himself. He did not give them any money or rice. How could they provide relief? There were no supplies, and only an official went. Were they going to feed the people? Or did Li Qitian think that they could comfort the people in the disaster area with just their mouths? This was clearly digging a hole for Pang Xiao to jump into. In the land that hated Pang Xiao the most, he was once again surrounded by the people's resentment. This was simply killing with a borrowed knife. Li Chitian was too vicious and unscrupulous. Qin Yining thought of so many things in an instant. Pang Xiao also thought of the same thing. But he had no other choice now. He had to pretend to be happy. Your Majesty is willing to put me in an important position. It is my honor. Go back and tell your Majesty to rest assured. I will not disappoint your Majesty's trust. I will do my job well. The imperial bodyguards who arrived were stunned. As long as they were not fools, they could understand the twists and turns in this matter. Prince Zhongshiren was such a brave and resourceful person. It was impossible for him to not understand. But he gladly accepted the decree. What did this mean? This meant that Wang Yi was magnanimous and loyal. The imperial bodyguards admired war god Wang Yi very much. After hearing Pang Xiao's words, they were moved and said, "Wang Yi, rest assured. I will report your words to your Majesty." Pang Xiao smiled and nodded, saying, "Thank you for your trouble. Your Majesty must be mentally and physically exhausted these days. Go back and tell Eunuch Li to pay more attention to your Majesty's diet and rest. Summon imperial physicians to take care of him. State matters are important, but your Majesty's health is even more important." Yes. The imperial bodyguards nodded heavily. They handed the decree to Pang Xiao with both hands. Then, they went to arrange for the troops that they brought to take over the Yuchi Yang and Jiyu Shixiang and bring them back to the capital. The Dragon Stallion army that had been left behind to guard Pang Xiao remained by his side to continue protecting him. Qin Yining pursed his lips. His body swayed slightly as he entered the bamboo hut. When everyone saw Qin Yining like this, they did not dare to rush him to go to the old capital of Dian. Bing Tang and Ji Yun hurriedly followed in. Pang Xiao apologetically cupped his hands towards the Dragon Stallion army, saying, "Brothers, it has been hard on you these days. Let's make some preparations and set off later." "Wang Yi, what are you saying? Wang Fei's body is not well. It is good for her to rest more. How can it be hard on you? Thank you for your understanding." Pang Xiao smiled gratefully and cupped his hands. All the men hurriedly returned the greeting. When Pang Xiao turned and walked towards the bamboo hut, everyone looked at Pang Xiao's tall back and could not help but feel admiration. He was such a godlike figure. He fought on the battlefield and was a capable official in the imperial court. In private, he cherished his wife so much. Coupled with his candid personality and strong aura, it was truly admirable. Pang Xiao didn't know that he had already gained the loyalty of many subordinates when he was unaware. Right now, he was only thinking about Qin Yining's body. In the bamboo hut, Bing Tang applied medicine on Qin Yining's wrist and said, "I will go back and pick some more herbs. We still need to take a few more doses of medicine. Don't worry, it is not a big problem. However, you should not exhaust yourself." "I understand." Qin Yining smiled gratefully at Bing Tang. Seeing that Pang Xiao had entered, Bing Tang and Ji Yun retreated. They called a few people to go and pick herbs together. Pang Xiao sat sideways beside Qin Yining and said with pity, "Things happen at such an unfortunate time. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.